So, Greg, I mean, I'm not sure if I need to tell you this, but some of your shirts are kind of crappy. I mean, you know,
What do you mean by crappy? They got a sweet little pocket right here.
I mean, they
That's
could be better. I mean, there's a place I know where it has lots of cool stuff. Uh,
yeah, but how cool?
we're talking about AAA cool. We're talking about shirts from 86.com. They're a pretty cool site. They sell all types of merchandise, including t-shirts, keychains, and other cool stuff that they sell on their site. And also have awesome video game material as well, such as Street Fighter, Killer Instinct, Guilty Gear, Skullgirls, BlazBlue, Smite, and 86's own brand of t-shirts as well as other stuff. Recently they put out some new keychains for Street Fighter 5. So yeah, there's some awesome stuff there. So I'm just suggesting, next time you go out and buy a shirt of any kind, I suggest check out 86.com. And if you want to support us and them at the same time, please use this link in your web browser to check out 86.com. Put in www.86.com !AFF equals 4. Again, www.86.com !AFF equals 4. This link will tell them that we sent you and that we're cool with them as long as you're cool with us. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Gruesome murder aside, Lara's extensive training paid off in big ways. She's discovered the legendary blade Excalibur, the Philosopher's Stone, the Ark of the Covenant, Thor's hammer Mjolnir, and even Bigfoot, whom she also promptly killed.
Suck it, Sasquatch. She survived dinosaurs, the Kraken, a Chinese dragon, and she even found the long-lost Led Zeppelin song Stairway to Heaven.
What? No. She found a literal stairway to heaven.
Really? Holy shit!
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rollin' 20s. We are the show that found out that fans have launched a petition for Zack Snyder to direct the Batman. Another election I won't like. I am Jeremy.
Steve. And Jesse.
Remember, you can subscribe to this show and several others in the MSP library at missionstarpodcast.com. You can like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and on Tumblr. Follow us on Twitter at the Rolling 20s. You can send us any fan mail, suggestions for the show, or hate mail at mspfreight@yahoo.com. The music you heard at the beginning of the show is by Machinae Supremacy. You can find more of their discography for free download at machinaesupremacy.com, as well as their latest couple of albums on amazon.com. The clip you heard is from Screw Attack. We found their latest video of Death Battle, Lara Croft versus Nathan Drake. You can find more of their videos on their YouTube channel under their channel of Screw Attack. How goes it?
Were you joking about that petition?
I was absolutely not joking. First off, let me say, welcome back from our break. We did record the second half of our critical hit, Deadpool, but that's very intensive when it comes to editing, and I've not had the time to dedicate to it. While we were out, one of the major stories is that, yes, a petition was put on change.org for Zack Snyder to be the new director of the solo Batman film. And, wow, this must really mean something to people, because in the 3 days it's been active, it's gained 5,281 supporters.
Change.org hasn't changed a damn thing.
Well, this person really believes it. He put in his petition to me, since what's his name, Ben Affleck is no longer going to do it, it's a no-brainer. And I just kind of sat and said, yeah, that's a no-brainer, all right.
Yeah, no brains involved.
But, I mean, 5,281 supporters in 3 days for a multi-million-dollar franchise. That tells me that people respond to this petition the same way they responded to the movies lately, which is, So, I mean, I couldn't make a better joke than that. But we have come back from ALA, and we didn't do media duties. We just kind of hung out for once.
And actually had fun. Yep.
I'm glad you guys did, because I kept getting pulled in different directions unintentionally. I meant to hang out with these guys more, but I had a 3 o'clock appointment which suddenly said, you know what, we're ready to go at noon, are you? Oh my god, sure. Which made me 5 minutes late for a D&D session at ALA, which I felt horrible about. Which, of course, in convention terms is enough to say, well, you ain't playing. And then that evening I got invited out to a couple other things from panelists, which is when they went to another D&D session, so we just kind of kept crossing paths, but not really joining up.
Mm. Yeah, we got to hang out and watch some TV together and stuff. So
watch a ton of Gallivant, which we may have made Jesse a fan, actually.
And Kirk, I think.
I wasn't into it at the beginning, but something happened in 2 years.
Too bad it's canceled.
Yeah.
How's everything else going?
Well, our roommate blew up his radiator. Or blew up his water pump, which cracked his radiator. There we go.
You guys need to find a different phrase for that, because it makes it sound like your roommate just suddenly decided to pop his hood one day, toss in a hand grenade, and see what happens.
It wasn't good.
But I mean, that's the phrase work there. He blew up his water pump. Really? Did he hate it that much? Yeah. I mean, frick, did anything else happen?
I don't know. We're using his terms, not ours. So
yeah.
I'm not saying he put on a suicide vest and decided he really hated his truck, but still.
I think we're gonna phrase it better, but his truck is no longer operable, and I might have to pick him up later tonight.
Joy.
Fun. Yay.
Yeah. Well, there was actually a lot, and I mean a lot of stories that came out over the past 2 weeks. Some of the sections could have been about 40 stories long if I had left them to just what came out, and I thought might be interesting enough to talk about. So if I missed anything over the last 2 weeks out there, I apologize if you think it was newsworthy. There was just only so much room without making this a 6-hour show, and we get enough complaints about this being a 3-hour show, so we're just going to go ahead with what we got. The subject of this week is Last Stand of the Records from IDW Comics. We'll get to that after we get through the news from the last 2 weeks. And first up is Marvel Media News. It's where we talk about Marvel properties that are ending up everywhere except comic book pages. Principal photography and cinema work has begun on the Black Panther film, officially. Marvel Studios sent out a press release as of January 26th, confirming that they have begun work on a movie that stars Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, Lupita Nyong'o, Denai Guerra, Martin Freeman, Daniel Kaluuya, Academy Award nominee Angela Bassett, Academy Award winner Forrest Whitaker, and Andy Serkis.
That's a long list.
One of these things is not like the other. But what were you going to say?
So this is a long list.
Oh, that's the starring list. I could do additional cast members, but that would,
That's a long list of stars.
Yeah, it would just cause your eyes to glaze over slowly, I'm positive.
How many constellations are they trying to put in this film?
How many what?
Constellations.
I had to think about that one for a minute. I thought you said how many cosplayers were they trying to put in this film. I'm sure they're trying to make something memorable enough to cosplay. I'm positive. Yeah. But it has begun work. The first images would come out, which haven't been terribly interesting. Obviously, they're going to be the ones low on effects and not requiring anything complicated to sort of ease people into the role. So the first images have been of Chadwick Boseman in his suit as King T'Challa. Not the Black Panther suit and that nice charcoal gray on black suit you saw.
Okay.
So it's begun. I don't remember. God, when was the release date for this film? I honestly don't remember when the movie is supposed to come out. I believe it's supposed to come out next year, but...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. February 16th, 2018. Found it. The film is going to be shot in Atlanta and South Korea. That's an interesting dichotomy.
South Korea.
South Korea. I don't know what exactly they need in South Korea, but considering all of Wakanda is supposed to fit into Atlanta, it could be anywhere in the Marvel universe.
Mountain landscape?
Yeah. I mean... Jungle, I'm assuming, maybe? Or
for all I know, they're trying to pretend it's Madripoor. I know, I just yanked out something that's not big in your little wheelhouses, but there it is.
Oh, I'm very familiar with South Korea since my mother's from there, but...
He meant Madripoor.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you can tell your mom that black people are about to invade her homeland, so...
Oh, great.
There has been news that Marvel's... or I should say ABC has gone forward and cast the leads for their new Cloak and Dagger TV show that's supposed to air on Freeform. They've cast
Freeform?
Olivia Holt. Yes. Freeform used to be known as ABC Family.
Ah, okay.
The Cloak and Dagger series has been in the works for a long time, but they have now cast Olivia Holt as Dagger and Aubrey Joseph as Tyrone, a.k.a. Cloak. They've released short character synopses. It says, quote, Tandy, once a privileged little girl, Tandy Bowen watched as her family was destroyed by a disastrous storm that uprooted her life. Now in her late teens, an unexpected encounter with a boy named Tyrone sparks a life-changing event. And young Tyrone Johnson wanted nothing more than to prove he was fearless. But when everything he held close was taken away, life taught Tyrone to be afraid. Now older and more sheltered, Tyrone closes himself off. But when he meets a girl named Tandy, his life changes forever, unquote. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this sounds like the synopsis was originally meant for Riverdale.
Not the one they're airing now.
No. I don't know the actors myself. I know the story of Cloak and Dagger via comics, but it's been a while since either character has really starred in a series, let alone their own series.
Last time I saw them in any form of media besides that Spider-Man series, I forget which Ultimate Spider-Man, was in a video game.
The last time I saw them, they were X-Men during the Utopia phase. When the X-Men hid their island nation in the San Francisco Bay, Cloak and Dagger were turncoats from the Dark X-Men brought in by Emma Frost. And after Utopia collapsed and the X-Men had their schism, they just kind of vanished entirely from rosters. Maybe that's the point where they decided they didn't need this drama. Well, in other Marvel TV news, they have cast the Runaways series for Hulu. The Runaways is the series of 6 young teens who find out that their parents in Los Angeles are supervillains and decide to strike out on their own instead of the usual trope of, my parents are evil, I must become a superhero.
No, I was like, my parents are evil, I'm getting out of this.
Yeah. So far, they have cast all 6, as far as I know. Rennie Feliz will play Alex Wilder, described as a lonely nerd who loves video games. Lyrica Okano will play Nico, a.k.a. Sister Grimm, a budding Wiccan with a carefully crafted goth aesthetic. Virginia Gardner will be Carolina, a teen trapped by expectations of her parents. Ariella Barrer is going to play Gert, a purple-haired, bespectacled contemporary riot girl with a strong sense of social justice. Greg Sulkin plays Chase, a typical high school jock, but with a brilliant passion for engineering. And Allegra Acosta is going to play Molly, the youngest of the Runaways. Any of that stick out to you?
Well, Molly.
Yeah, Molly, one of the few mutants in the world who's punched out Wolverine in the first hit. It's absolutely true, and that's back when she was still 11.
Yeah,
she was
rated not pulling your punches.
Well, let me put it to you this way. When she first discovered she was a mutant and she started throwing punches, the X-Men got wind of her. They never really got their hands on her, obviously, because she kept slipping through. But they did measure her strength, and at age 11, she's already listed as one of the strongest mutants on the planet.
Whoa.
Imagine what happens when puberty finishes its ravages with this girl.
Didn't we see her in the Battle for the Atom?
Yeah, she was one of the mutants that came back from the future. I went ahead and sent you guys a link to the IO9 story because the IO9 story had pictures of the various actors, as well as a picture of the Runaways as a group, and I think you'll find they did a pretty good job. The casting is relatively strong. I gotta admit, Lyrica Okano, she's almost what I would imagine from a live Sister Grimm. And the young Allegra Acosta there, the one that's going to play Molly, oh, I can't wait to see her in a bandana throwing punches. So there's still no release date yet for this Hulu series. Do you think that's going to be worth a tune-in?
Oh, yeah,
maybe.
probably.
I'm looking forward to it.
If Hulu does at least half as good as Netflix did with their stuff, then yeah, it's going to be really good.
I wouldn't expect a whole lot of spin-offs, though. They're starting with a show with a very big cast, so we'll have to see where this goes. Because remember, they're not just casting the kids; they have to cast their parents.
Oh yeah.
So that's 6 pairs of adults you need. The Fox has finally gotten news from the Motion Picture Rating Association as to what to expect from Logan. The MPAA has officially designated Logan as an R-rated film for strong, brutal violence and language throughout, and for brief nudity.
Well, it ain't gonna be the kid.
I just hope it's
gonna be.
I hope it's not Professor X's medulla oblongata. That might be horrifying. Does that change your opinion of the film, knowing that it's an R? Because I am still suitably curious.
I expected it. They were. Yeah. That's what they were shooting for.
The rating just doesn't really matter to me as much as the story. I don't care what they show on screen as long as the story is frickin' engaging, which they haven't had in the last 2 X-Men films.
Yeah, I think the general consensus of our friends around here is that this should actually be pretty good.
Okay. Well, believe it or not, we talked about this mystery X-Men TV project that Fox has been working on. It recently got a pilot order.
Okay, really?
Yes, and we don't know the name of this series, nor the characters involved. What has been announced, though, is that Fox has gotten someone to go back on their word.
Who?
Bryan Singer.
Huh.
Bryan Singer said for a while he was done directing X-Men projects, or at least X-Men projects in general. He made it sound like he was walking away to do some creator stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out he's going to be directing the pilot of this unnamed X-Men series. He's also going to executive produce the series, so maybe he hasn't broken his word. Maybe he just slipped in a little bit of a loophole. But, Singer is the one who has worked on numerous X-Men films over the years. He's also been directing episodes of Football Wives, Mockingbird Lane, and Battle Creek.
What?
These are TV shows he's worked on.
Huh. All right.
But probably in bigger news this week is that Fox has said that this unnamed X-Men TV show will include actual X-Men.
Okay.
The series is supposed to be about a couple who find out that their child is a mutant, which causes them to go on the run from some unknown force. But supposedly the series is going to include actual X-Men characters. I don't know about his features, but at least his side characters in this series. I'm going to assume, since this is a TV show, they're not going to go with anything that requires a whole lot of special effects. So you can count out characters like Beast and Colossus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as to which ones will appear, I couldn't even speculate. The X-Men roster over the years right now probably has to be about 50 to 60 characters deep.
Yeah, probably not Nightcrawler either.
No.
No, I would say not. No Mystique either. But this is also news that kind of makes me excited, except I haven't been impressed by these yet so far in the cinematic universe. This X-Men TV series will also include Sentinels.
The kid?
What?
No, multiple. Not Sentinel, but Sentinels.
Private?
Sentinels, the mutant hunting robots. Sentinels are a big deal in the X-Men universe. They're typically, like 6 stories tall.
They vary depending on generation, but yeah.
Yeah, usually adaptable mutant hunting robots. The cinematic version of them are approximately 15 feet tall, and so far haven't been as impressive. I'm curious to know what version of Sentinels are going to be using for the show, but again, information is extremely limited. And I'm trying to figure out if that's on purpose or if there still is just no actual name for the series as of yet. Any opinions?
I'm thinking due to the series, it might be named after the mutant they're going after, but that seems not very imaginative, but X-Men titles aren't very imaginative.
Well, no, X-Men titles are pretty imaginative, but if it's going to be named after the character it goes after, let's hope it's not as simple as Skin or Husk. That might confuse people.
Proteus.
Proteus as a villain would be awesome, but that would be so effects-heavy you would have to probably increase the average movie budget by about 50% to make it work. Did you guys hear about the big project that was announced over the just before Anime Los Angeles?
No, probably not.
Square Enix and Marvel are teaming up to produce a new video game. They're calling it the Avengers Project.
Oh, I did hear about this.
Yeah, a short trailer has been announced. I'm not going to share it with you because it's rather nondescript. It involves a lot of broken and discarded Avengers items with a female voiceover that mentions that the Avengers have been inactive for some time and that they need to reassemble, as the voice puts it. So, given that this includes like Bruce Banner's broken glasses, Mjolnir and Captain America's shield lying on the ground, and a broken Iron Man gauntlet, I'm going to guess that the Avengers have been defeated for quite some time, and it's up to somebody else to pick up the mantle. But also, given the Avengers roster over the decades, as well as the potential of Square Enix as a storytelling property, I have no clue where this could go, realistically. You could either be traveling back in time to save the Avengers, or bringing up like a whole new Avengers crew. You know, there's the outside chance this could be the M2 universe, but I really hope not. You know, Spider-Girl, American Dream, Wild Thing. Wild Thing was probably one of the weirdest creations they had.
Oh, God. That only lasted, 5 issues?
Okay, check that. Juggernaut's Child, J2, was probably the weirdest creation I've ever had. That was almost embarrassing. Are you guys fans of are you guys fan of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3?
I have not really gotten into most Marvel vs. Capcom games. I loved the first one. I loved the precursor to the X-Men arcade game. Fighting.
You mean X-Men vs. Street Fighter, or?
No, just X-Men Children of the Atom.
Okay.
The name of it. X-Men vs. Street Fighter wasn't bad either, but
I had lots of fun with Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I never really touched the third installment.
Well, if you're looking for an excuse, as of March 7th, Capcom has announced that Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is coming to Xbox One and Windows PC via Steam. There will be a digital re-release of these games. The cost will be $25.
That's not a terrible amount for it.
Yeah, there will be a limited edition physical release, aka disc, for $30, and it will come with an exclusive comic featuring original art from Marvel artists Sean Chen and Gerardo Sandoval. So, if you're looking for an excuse to play the game, there's a good cheap excuse coming.
Mm-hmm.
And last up in Marvel media news, there is a print of there is a print of Miss Marvel that is being sold online via Golden Apple Comics online store. It is not a limited run, so you don't have to worry about them running out anytime soon. Would you like to see what it looks like?
Sure. Sure.
Okay, check it out. I just sent it to you. This is interesting for a couple of different reasons. Number one, obviously it's not in the typical style of any of Kamala Khan's artists. This is being done by David Mack, who's been known for doing watercolor-style covers for the Alias series and the current Jessica Jones comic.
I like it.
And this could be good or bad news depending on where you fall on the political spectrum, but portions of every sale of this print, which is $25, is going directly to the ACLU.
Okay.
The reasons for that is because the ACLU is one of the institutions right now that seems to be pushing back hard against the current American president. So, like I said, it depends on where you fall on the political spectrum. If you just like art, though, it's a pretty nice piece. Any opinions?
Always been a fan of this guy's work.
You like David Mack? You never expressed any opinion on it.
Well, I'm a fan of a lot of artists. I just don't know most of them by name. I've seen this guy's work elsewhere before, and it's enjoyable. I like it.
It just sounds so odd. I'm really a big fan of your artwork. Who are you?
What's your name again?
That happens far more often than you think.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I really like that movie. What the fuck was its name? That happens to me entirely too often.
I could just imagine Jesse going to a convention, looking through a portfolio. I've been a really big fan of your work. Looks at sign, David! Now we have DC Media News. That's where we talk about DC's properties that are coming everywhere but their comic book pages. And as you heard at the beginning little barb of the show there, Ben Affleck has backed away from directing the Batman solo film. This happened as of about 5 days ago, which will put it at about January 29th, January 30th. He released a statement via Warner Brothers that said, quote, "There are certain characters who hold a special place in the heart of millions. Performing this role demands focus, passion, and the very best performance I can give. It's become clear that I cannot do both jobs to the level they require. Together with the studio, I have decided to find a partner in a director who will collaborate with me on this massive film. I am still in this, and we are still making it, but we are currently looking for a director. I remain extremely committed to this project and look forward to bringing this to life for fans around the world," unquote.
At least it's not creative differences.
Yeah.
Oh, shots fired. But, it is troubling to me. I know that his latest movie, I think it was called The Color of Night, bombed in the box office. I just hope that Warner Brothers didn't look at this bomb in his record and said, well, obviously he can't direct it. The man has directed Oscar-winning films.
Yeah. Fargo.
Yeah.
And that's the most recent one.
Yeah, and everybody's entitled to the occasional low point in a career, and Ben Affleck had a serious low point before he won Oscars. So, I mean, I really hope this is just Ben Affleck saying it's too much right now, I can't do it, rather than somebody from Warner Brothers saying, well, you failed, back off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't rule out the latter, but I like to believe the former was the main reason.
I really hope so. But there was news that I am not excited about in regards to the Batman solo film.
Uh-huh.
According to Deadline, screenwriter Chris Terrio just completed a rewrite of the original script of the Batman, which was done by Ben Affleck and Jeff Johns. Do you know why I do not like this information?
No.
Why?
Terrio was brought into the DC Films fold by Affleck in 2015, following their work on Argo. Terrio rewrote the original script for Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and he's also done the same thing with the two planned Justice League films.
Yeah.
You can imagine why I'm not happy about this news.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when I heard that Ben Affleck was starring, writing, and directing the Batman, I was actually rather excited to see what he could produce. He really seems to channel Bruce Wayne to a serious degree. Now that I've heard that this Terrio cat, who's worked on Batman v Superman and what we've seen so far of the Justice League, is working on the Batman script, I have lost a lot of hope. Somebody's going to need to hit me with a blue ring, because I have a serious problem with my hope right now.
No, I see a red ring in your future.
It's definitely not orange. I don't want it. There's no release date given yet for the Batman solo film. The Aquaman film is moving forward, however, and they finally cast Black Manta.
Okay.
He's being played by a man named wow, that's a tough one to pronounce. Yahya Abdul Mateen II. He starred in the recent Netflix series The Get Down. Abdul Mateen has been officially offered the role of Black Mantis and is currently in talks with Warner Brothers about the role. If he decides to say yes, he will suit up with Patrick Wilson, who was previously the Owlman in The Watchmen, as Aquaman's half-brother, Orm the Ocean Master, as the primary villains of the film. So there will be two. Which is good news for me because those are two of Aquaman's most major villains, but it's also kind of bad news for me because the more I think about it, the more I realize those are the only villains of Aquaman I really know. I don't know a whole lot about Yahya Abdul Mateen. Just based on the image, though, he seems to have the physically imposing nature Black Manta have. I don't know if he'll have the intensity that's been portrayed in comics recently. I sent you guys an image so you can take a quick look at his face. If you give him a wig that brings his hair a little closer, yeah, he would look a lot like a grizzled veteran of ocean fights.
Yeah.
I would imagine that his costume wouldn't be too terrible to put together.
I wondered about that myself because most of Black Manta's costume is pretty nondescript. What worries me the most is his helmet.
Yeah.
His helmet
easily do that wrong.
Yeah, both in media and comic books, the Black Manta helmet, for those that don't know, is this almost discus-like object with these tremendous red eyes. It is something that very easily, as Jesse said, could screw up the film just because you made it comic accurate. It's one of those cases that certain liberties are going to have to be taken for film to make this thing look more reasonable. Otherwise, he's going to look like an evil Alpha 5 throughout the film.
Also, they need to look into aerodynamics for its construction, because obviously it's supposed to help him move through the water better and better vision. That's
an interesting theory, but even for a character as intense and with a reputation of Black Manta, and believe me, I give props to the character because he's really carved out a niche as this wickedly, I almost want to say nihilistic man of extreme capability. But at the same time, when you look at that helmet, you just wonder how anybody ever takes him seriously unless they've seen Black Manta like gut their parents in front of them. You know what I mean?
I think the laser eyes are pretty intimidating too.
I don't know. If that popped out of the water, I'm sure I'd be staring at that thinking, look, Deadmau5 is here.
And then you get zapped.
Granted, but I'd die with a smile. We've discussed my recent viewing of the Suicide Squad film.
Mm-hmm.
Which is amazing because I never thought I would find a movie that makes Batman v Superman look good.
It changed my opinion after watching it with you.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to watch. Well, the writer-director of the film, David Ayer, he decided to pen a letter that he put out on Twitter in response to people's dislike of Suicide Squad. Okay?
Okay.
I was curious because I haven't read it yet. It's one of those things I wanted to savor once we were all in the same room.
Savor.
Let's see. Yeah, let's see how this works. Quote, "Thank you so much. I know it's a controversial film. I really tried to make something different with a look and voice of its own. I took inspiration from the insanity of the original comics. Making a movie is a journey, not a straight line. I learned so much. People want what they want, and everyone has a personal vision of how each character should look and walk and talk. If you set out to make a mass appeal movie, it's easy to end up with vanilla, but I went for it. And I know Suicide Squad has its flaws. Hell, the world knows it. Nothing hurts more than to pick up a newspaper and see a couple of years of your blood, sweat, and tears ripped to shreds. The hate game is strong out there. The movie was wildly successful commercially, and the world got introduced to some very cool characters in the DC universe. And that success is due to the wonder and power of DC, of its characters. Would I do a lot of things different? Yep, for sure. I wish I had a time machine. I'd make the Joker the main villain and engineer a more grounded story. I have to take the good and bad and learn from it. I love making movies and I love DC. I'm a high school dropout and used to paint houses for a living. I'm lucky to have the job I have. I have to give the characters the stories and the plots they deserve next time. Real talk. And no, there isn't a secret edit of the film with a bunch of Joker scenes hidden in a salt mine somewhere." Unquote. I do appreciate that he is actually listening to criticism instead of just dismissing it like Zack Snyder seems to have.
Right.
And I do appreciate that he seems to agree with the early criticism that I need to make something more grounded. The villain of Suicide Squad in The Enchantress was very milquetoast. You know, you could have swapped that character out with just about any other character who has a world-ending laser light into the sky filled with garbage. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But,
yes and no. I didn't actually subject myself to the film, so...
Okay.
You don't need to.
I do agree with his supposition that the Joker should have been the main villain of the story. However, I will counter that by saying it would have been nice if the Joker showed up in the Suicide Squad. Yes, I know Jared Leto played an actor called the Joker, but I will not admit that was the Joker. You can fling whatever hate you want my way, but I have approved of the versions of Cesar Romero. I have approved of Jack Nicholson. I have approved of Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger did an amazing turn as the Joker. I approve of Mark Hamill. What Jared Leto did seemed more like an out-of-town meth head who just decided to pick up the Joker's costume and just run with it. That is my opinion. And I'm not saying that opinion is right or wrong. That is simply my opinion. Fair enough?
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, hopefully the third time is the charm for The Flash.
Third director?
Unfortunately, no. They still have not found a director. They have found a third screenwriter.
Oh, good lord.
What?
The first director, Seth Grahame-Smith, penned the original script. Okay? Then he left, citing creative differences. Then Rick Famuyiwa came on board as the director and rewrote the script. But Famuyiwa left, citing creative differences. According to Variety, Joby Harold has been hired to do a page-one rewrite of the script.
Oh my god.
If you don't know what a page-one rewrite is, it basically means, this is a very nice script. Hey, this is a very nice shredder. Let's start over. So they are now rewriting this film for the third time, and there's still no director yet.
Well, honestly, that's probably a good thing, considering.
Well, maybe, because Seth Grahame-Smith may have left because of creative differences, but by all accounts, he's a pretty darn good director. Rick Famuyiwa, I'm less familiar with, but I haven't had a whole lot of... Let me put it this way. There's not a whole lot of strong opinions one way or the other regarding his directing so far. Joby Harold, I don't know writers very well, so I couldn't tell you. I guess my concern so far is, what does this do to DC's schedule? Because if they're doing a page one rewrite in January, and this movie is originally scheduled to come out March of 2018, is there any hope for their schedule to remain intact? Because to me, no.
Yeah, I mean that would be my thoughts on it too. And we've already heard from other people that there is no backup plan.
Well, that was what came out from a producer who has left DC Films, so you can take that with a grain of salt. Maybe he was just being being salty in his own right.
Or they've made a backup plan since.
Right, but given what we've seen of DC structure, I would tend to think that what he knew at the time is probably true.
Joby Harold has, wrote for Awake, 07 movie.
Okay.
Produced King Arthur Legend of the Sword. And
that's that latest King Arthur movie with Charlie Hunnam.
I think so.
Okay.
And he was a producer for Edge of Tomorrow.
Okay, so what I've heard so far is that this man is deep in Warner Brothers' office space right now. I mean, all those projects are Warner Brothers projects, so it sounds like they went into their files and just said, this guy's made pretty good scripts, let's get him to do it. So, again, though, this pretty much blows up the where the Flash stands in their schedule, because while... Yes, the Black Panther started filming recently, and yes, the Black Panther is expected to come out March of next year. Let me remind you that at this time, that means the Black Panther has kept its director since the beginning, kept its script since the beginning, which they've been working on since probably last Comic-Con, and cast the entirety of the needs that they have for that script. Without a script for the Flash, that means they have no idea who the villain is, let alone who should play said villain.
Yeah, they still... Script writing is kind of the first step.
Yeah, without the script, that means even costume designers can't get to work on what these characters should supposedly look like.
Well, at least one guarantee is they can make the Flash costume.
We've seen them make the Flash costume, and we've seen that they took heavily from Square Enix Play Arts Kai to do it.
Oh, God.
And remember, that costume has appeared in 2 films now, so it's locked in. It's what they got. Actually... Now that we've seen the stills from the Justice League, it's appeared in 3 films.
And that has the most color of the entire cast, and it's still dark.
Yep. Man. And for those people that think I'm just having fun with this, I'm not. I want good DC films. In my opinion, I've yet to see one.
Not within this cinematic universe, anyways.
Let me put it to you this way. I'm actually starting to miss the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern film.
Wow! That was hot garbage. Damn.
It was a total garbage fire. I admit that 100%, but at the same time, it was a watchable garbage fire. At least it was one of those movies you could sit and make fun of. So far, the current DC Cinematic Universe, when I sit there, I'm too depressed to make fun of it. So apparently we're going to air all my dirty laundry today, is what I'm hearing. But... speaking of the original Green Lantern film, one of the actors from that film is currently in talks to be the father of Aquaman in his movie.
Definitely not Ryan Reynolds.
No, actually his name is Tamura Morrison. He played Abin Sur in the original Green Lantern film with Ryan Reynolds.
Oh. Good part.
Yeah, but he's more notorious for another role he had. Tamura Morrison also played Jango Fett in the Star Wars prequels.
Oh! Okay.
Yeah. Wouldn't have known that under all those prosthetics, would you?
No.
So, he is currently in talks to play Arthur Curry's father in the movie. Jason Momoa's father, in other words.
Okay. I imagine that's going to be kind of a short-lived bit, too.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a short role, because if Tamura Morrison has to be on screen with a full-grown Jason Momoa, one of the lines in the movie should be, "Damn, you must have killed your mother when you came out." So, we've talked on and off about the Black Lightning supposed TV show that's being worked on by the producer of The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow, Greg Berlanti, right?
Yeah.
He's been shopping the show around. Where do you think that Greg Berlanti's Black Lightning show would end up?
BET?
Took the words right out of
Okay, you son of a bitch. You go sit over there with Steve Bannon. God
Low blow. That was a low blow.
I'm going to take you out to Harlem and have you make that joke.
Are they going to offer me a cup of coffee?
Oh, they're going to offer you a hot cup of something. Seriously, though, where do you think this Black Lightning show landed?
CW again?
Jesse gets a cookie.
That's
the CW is added to its slate of DC shows with a Black Lightning pilot.
I thought they were done adding comic book shows.
That's what they claimed, but apparently they lied. The show originally had a pilot order from Fox, but the network reportedly passed on the series before the pilot was filmed for some reason. I wonder why Fox would pass on this. You would think this is the kind of property they would want to pick up on right now. And they already have 2 DC-related shows in Gotham and Lucifer. It's not like they'd be stretching at all to pick up Black Lightning.
Hmm.
It's an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't say that Fox passed on it, I might say that, well, maybe the CW just, made him an offer.
I was waiting for you to finish that sentence. I was afraid you were going to go with, chitlins and collard greens or something.
Oh, God. Fried chicken and watermelon.
There we go. I knew you had it in there somewhere, Cracker. Supergirl is adding a legacy actress to its roster.
Legacy?
Terry Hatcher is joining the roster.
As who?
Well, her role has not been identified. Her role has not been identified so far, according to the Hollywood Reporter. She'll actually be the new major villain of Season 2 of Supergirl. That's all we know right now.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, I mean, I imagine there's going to be at least one scene between her and Dean Cain, who is also on that show, appearing sporadically as Supergirl's adopted father.
Right.
So that's all the information we have on that. I'm still watching Supergirl, and it's one of those cases where the show does better for me weekly than it does in binge watching. And binge watching, I get tired of it fast. But there's another actor actually joining Supergirl for this season. Hercules.
Okay.
Kevin Sorbo has been added to the cast of Supergirl.
Wow.
Yeah, according to executive producer Andrew Kreisberg, quote,
Lucy Lawless, man. That'd be like most of the actors I was watching back in.
Fortunately, Lucy Lawless right now is playing around with Bruce Campbell in Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Yeah.
But according to executive producer Andrew Kreisberg, quote, since his days as Hercules, Kevin Sorbo has brought such a strong presence to the screen, and we couldn't be more excited to have him join us on Supergirl, unquote. If this was about 3-4 years ago, I would have been right behind him on this and excited to hear about Kevin Sorbo. But considering the weird vitriolic stuff he has posted on the internet, I don't want him.
I haven't been paying attention, apparently.
After Obama was elected as president in this country, one of the things he posted was that basically my people, black people, need to be treated like the animals we supposedly are.
Oh, snap.
He's one of those.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I know. And that's sad because I grew up really enjoying The Legend of Hercules, but unfortunately it's like the Lethal Weapon movies. Now that I know what's in Mel Gibson's head, or in this case, what's in Kevin Sorbo's head, it doesn't have the same feeling anymore.
No.
So, unfortunately I don't use the phrase ruined my childhood very often, but Kevin Sorbo ruined my childhood. And last up in DC media news, Warner Brothers is starting a new documentary series. It's going to be on the digital network Machinima, and is profiling creative icons, and they're kicking it off with an episode dedicated to Jack Kirby. It's going to be hosted by Comic Book Girl 19, and it's going to be called Greater Creators. It's described by Warner Brothers as an in-depth study of creative icons who push the boundaries of art and whose influence can still be felt today. First season is going to be comprised of 14 episodes, and Greater Creators debuted on Tuesday, with future episodes that are supposed to come weekly on Go 90. Future episodes on the series, boy, it's a geek wet dream. Alan Moore, Gene Roddenberry, Frank Herbert, Stephen King, Stanley Kubrick, Hayao Miyazaki, Frank Frazetta, Ray Harryhausen, and more.
Wow.
That's a strong group of people to dedicate an episode of a documentary to. And it all started with Jack Kirby. Jeez. I have a feeling I found something new to binge watch. Now we have general media news. We have stories about multimedia properties that are not Marvel and DC related, but are still of interest to nerds. Unfortunately, we have to start with somebody who passed away while we were on break. He was 77 years old. He was in The Elephant Man, 1984, Alien, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Hellboy, Doctor Who, and V for Vendetta. And that's just a very small part of the filmography of Mr. John Hurt. If you're not sure who he was in Alien, he was the very first man who took a facehugger in that film. He played Kane, who sat down to eat, and in the middle of eating, all of a sudden something just burst out of his chest and started to harass Sigourney Weaver for 2 long hours.
He was also
John Hurt.
God damn lag.
I said V for Vendetta. He played the British Prime Minister.
Yeah.
It's one of those cases where I'm sure a lot has already been said about the man, but at least it wasn't like a 2016 death. It wasn't one of these sudden, very weird items. He was 77, and he looked his age.
Yeah. Well, and Mary Tyler Moore passed too.
Yeah, but not exactly in the wheelhouse of this show, but yes.
True.
I never met anybody who had anything intrinsically bad to say about John Hurt. He seems to be one of those guys who just went through his life making things as pleasant as possible for most people he came across. He does have a cinematic legacy, though. He's going to be a hard man to forget.
Yep.
Another thing that happened while we were out was that the subtitles come out for Star Wars Episode 8. We now know what that film is going to be called.
Yep.
Star Wars The Last Jedi. This movie comes out December of this year. And this will be, as far as I know, the last cinematic appearance of Carrie Fisher.
Yep. Unless they do decide to follow through and CG here.
No, they've explicitly said they are not going to do that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, she finished all of her she finished all of her scenes for Episode 8 prior to her passing.
No,
if they do,
rumor going around that they might CG her into 9, but
yeah, they still haven't made a definitive decision on that, as far as I know. They're still working on the plan, but fortunately it's one of those cases where they have the script, they have most of the actors. That's the one item that really requires some conversation at this point. Some people have noticed, though, that if you start stringing together the titles, it could form a sentence. I noticed on Instagram somebody put together the subtitles for the latest 3 Star Wars film, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, From His Nap.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook.
So I'm almost curious to know what the subtitle of the last film is, just to see if this does string together into something. I take it everybody in this room has seen Rogue One?
Yes.
Did you wish you could have gotten more of those characters before what happened at the end?
I liked some of them. Others,
okay.
But I mean, I think that was kind of the point, is that they weren't all the likable.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the good news is you have an opportunity to catch up on the lives of some of them pre-Rogue One. Disney is publishing 2 new novels for young adult audiences. It's going to give insight into the lives of Jyn Erso, Chirrut, and Baze before they became heroes of the rebellion.
Ah.
It was announced through StarWars.com. 2 new books will be out in March. The book revolving around Jyn in a solo adventure, and another one with Chirrut and Baze before the events of the film. The book with Jyn will be called Rebel Rising. Yep, and the book with Chirrut and Baze, let me see. It's called Guardians of the Whills.
Wills?
Whills, W-H-I-L-L-S, Whills. So both of these books, they won't be out in March. They will be out on May 2nd. So you have a chance to read novelizations that'll tell you more stories about characters who definitely will not be continuing in the Star Wars universe. And I guess some people decided they needed an explanation in regards to Rogue One. A big question that, according to IO9, has been hanging around the film is that why was Princess Leia at the Battle of Scarif towards the end of the film?
That was a curiosity for me.
Okay. A recent episode of the Star Wars show had Star Wars expert Pablo Hidalgo. I wonder if he's the same guy that figured out how fast a rain boom is, but that's a whole different issue. They asked why Leia's consular ship, the Tantive 4, appeared at the end of the film, which directly connected Rogue One to the events of Star Wars A New Hope. And according to this expert, quote, "The plan was always that Leia was going to go to Tatooine to pick up Obi-Wan Kenobi and Raddus was going to escort her. Then the news of Scarif came in, and that was deemed more important, because it's the one warship they have at this point," unquote. So in other words, the Battle of Scarif was the Rebels' version of an all-in. We win this or we fail totally. And they decided to send the one heavy warship they had, which already had a side mission at that point. The reason why the Tantive 4 was within Raddus's main ship instead of flying on its own was that apparently it needed repairs. It was having emergency repairs before the ship was scuttled.
Huh.
So that was also explained as probably the reason why it couldn't outrun Darth Vader's Star Destroyer, because it was already crippled by the time it launched.
Really that bad?
It was good enough to go into hyperspace.
Yes. At the beginning of A New Hope, though, it was incapable of hyperspace, so it probably didn't make it very far. Yeah, her ship must have not been capable of very far hyperspace travel, because by the time they got to Tatooine, that damn thing was limping.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think of Doctor Who's latest actor, Peter Capaldi?
He's not my favorite Doctor, but I think that's the writing more than the actor.
You know, he's not my favorite either, and I don't fault him as an actor. What I think, though, is that he is of a significant age, and the role requires you to be a little more physical as it's currently been portrayed than he can really do. You know what I mean?
I think it's just the writing. You know, they're making him old and crotchety in the writing.
Okay, well, the good news is you won't have to deal with it much longer. Peter Capaldi has announced that this 12th season is his last. He reportedly said, quote, "One of the greatest privileges of being Doctor Who is to see the world at its best. From our brilliant crew and creative team working for the best broadcaster on the planet, to the viewers and the fans whose endless creativity, generosity, and inclusiveness points to a brighter future ahead. I can't thank everyone enough. It's been cosmic," unquote. Peter Capaldi will be the Doctor through this season, and with the next Christmas episode, which should come out Christmas of this year, he will be giving up the role to a new actor.
I just hope that the writers take it in a different direction, and whoever they get to replace him is something that I like more.
Oh, currently there is one actor who's actually beginning to petition themselves for the role of the new Doctor.
Who?
Haley Atwell.
Interesting.
For those that don't remember, Haley Atwell was Peggy Carter for Marvel for a very long time.
Yeah.
She would like to be the new Doctor.
And Jesse, you're muted.
That would be different.
So far, but it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility considering how they cast the Master's latest incarnations.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, I was kind of hoping that they would follow through with Maisie Williams and her offers to be the next Doctor. She's pixie short, but she is a hell of an actress.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Herbert's estate has confirmed some news that I wasn't quite expecting.
Doing something with Dune?
Yeah, they've hired Denis Villeneuve to direct a new live-action adaptation of Dune.
So just Doom, not Children of Doom, or any of the...
Well, it's one of those things where Dune is such a deep property of writing, it's hard to know exactly where they're going to land on this. But according to the Facebook post of Brian Herbert, Frank Herbert's son, quote, "It's official. Legendary Pictures has signed the very talented Denis Villeneuve?
It's French.
To direct the exciting new Dune series film project. More to follow soon," unquote. That's all I got.
Okay.
So Dune is getting a new adaptation. Man, the original film adaptation wasn't the slickest film, but it has a special place in my heart as a cult film. The
It's got
TV show,
Sting.
it's got Sting and Patrick Stewart.
No, Patrick Stewart was not. Patrick Stewart was in the sci-fi one.
Pretty sure he wasn't.
Yep, he was. He played Gurney Halleck in the sci-fi. I
Oh, no,
can't
he-
remember who Gurney Halleck was in the movie, but it was not Patrick Stewart.
Oh no, I'm positive Patrick Stewart was in the Dune film because he was standing right there next to McLaughlin.
You're gonna have to look that one up because I know you're wrong.
Okay. Gurney Halleck, Patrick Stewart, Dune from 1984. There it is. It's there on IMDb. Now, are you referring to the 2000 Dune or the Children of Dune?
2000 Dune.
Gurney Halleck in the 2000 Dune series was played by P.H. Moriarty.
Okay. Alright, I'm wrong then.
Well, James Cameron is returning to Terminator, but he's bringing a special guest with him. For people who don't know, the original Terminator was co-created by James Cameron, a pretty notorious director at this point to a certain era of filmgoers. He's bringing Tim Miller with him to direct a reboot and conclusion of the Terminator story. Reboot and conclusion.
What, Genesis didn't cover it?
Genesis didn't cover crap, from what I understand. I have yet to see it myself, but I have yet to develop the intestinal fortitude. I still have this case of Suicide Squad deep in my digestive tract I'm trying to work out.
It might be a small pill to swallow, but...
You're probably going to have to swallow a horse tranquilizer to get it out, frankly. But the director he's brought with him is Tim Miller.
Huh.
Steve, it sounds like, knows who that is. Jesse, I'm guessing, does not.
No.
Tim Miller directed a recent film that's done very well for critics and box offices known as Deadpool.
Okay. Alright, I get that.
Financier David Ellison, who helped finance Terminator Genesis, has reportedly hired a new team of what he calls top-flight science fiction authors to develop the story. Well, monkeys and typewriters. Look, I mean, if you tell me you hired a top-flight sci-fi author to create a new screenplay, awesome. I'm very interested to know what he comes up with. Top-flight science fiction authors, plural, that makes it sound like there's going to be a lot of fighting and coffee thrown. You know what I mean?
I don't know. They do have writing teams, so maybe it's something along that line.
I just hope somebody's in charge. If there isn't one person in charge, that could go out of control really quickly. And last up, when it comes to DC Media news, it's not the happiest story for DC Media, but it is one that needs to be covered because it did occur. Do you know what the Razzies are?
Yes.
Wow, that was almost unenergetic. The Razzies, for those that don't know, they are the anti-Oscars. A man put it together. It used to be his joke during Oscar parties. He made a faux award for the worst films and acting portrayals of the year. Then at some point, because of the internet, it picked up enough steam to where he's producing his own fake award show that he calls the Razzies. Several films are up for Worst Film of the Year, including Zoolander 2, Gods of Egypt, Dirty Grandpa, and Batman v Superman.
Really, Suicide Squad didn't make that list?
Oddly enough, no. I don't know how it didn't. But the reason why I bring this up is not because Batman v Superman is up for a Razzie. I brought it up because Batman v Superman is up for 7 Razzies.
Yes.
Oddly, I disagree with their first one because, their second one, because in addition to Worst Film, they put up Ben Affleck for Worst Actor.
Really?
Yeah.
Or Batman v Superman?
Yeah, he was one of the most likable things in the whole darn movie.
Yeah,
I disagree with that, but Jesse Eisenberg did get a Razzie nomination for Worst Supporting Actor.
He was the one that played Luther, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and look,
see,
Jesse Eisenberg...
hands down win for me.
Unfortunately, no, it is not a lock, because also up for Worst Supporting Actor is Jared Leto from Suicide Squad, as the Joker. So, once again, Lex Luthor and the Joker are going to have to fight it out for the award.
Okay, but here's the thing. See, Jared Leto was barely in the Suicide Squad from all that, from all I can understand. Whereas, unfortunately, Luther was like throughout the entire freaking film. So, yeah,
well, I agree with I agree with your assessment. However, the few scenes that Leto had in Suicide Squad created this fish-like odor that I have not been able to get rid of. Also up for Razzie from Batman v Superman is worst screen combo for Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill.
Wow.
Okay. Worst director for Zack Snyder.
Yeah, that deserves to be there.
Worst screenplay, and worst prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel. Jeez, I could go through the entire list of the Razzies, but I just wanted to keep it focused on what was necessary to the news. And
yeah.
I gotta agree, though, that I know a lot of people bought tickets, and there are some people out there that like it. You know, Kevin Smith, one of my heroes, he really enjoys the film. Did not diggity. You know, I recently rewatched it on my HBO Now account, and dear God, that was difficult.
I don't know. My first watching, I was like, I kind of tuned out, after the first day. I said, okay, let me finish the CinemaSins for this.
It's rough. I'm eagerly awaiting riff tracks. Let me put it that way. All right, and now there is Marvel comic news. This is where we talk about the Marvel properties that if they aren't on the comic book pages now, they will be very soon. Civil War II has made its end. That was the last review we did, and we came to a group consensus that they tried hard, but no, it was not a good event in itself. They did have the recent epilogue issue, Civil War II: The Oath. It was done by Nick Spencer, Rod Reese, Phil Noto, Raphael Ienco, Simon Kurdansky, and Dono Sanchez Almara. And unfortunately, the guesses I had about where this issue was going turned out to be true.
Oh?
Steve Rogers now runs S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, I could kind of see that one coming.
I don't think you fully understand. In this issue was a swearing-in ceremony for Steve Rogers that will echo another recent event in American history. It was a dour event with very few people smiling in the rain in Washington, D.C.
Oh.
Yeah.
They went there.
Yes, it does. Now suddenly the new event that Marvel's been teasing, Secret Empire, makes a hell of a lot more sense. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can imagine, in the issue, it does detail Steve and his ideas for what he could do with S.H.I.E.L.D. eventually. Work it from the inside out, make it into something stronger, and replace it eventually with Hydra-like rule. And I gotta admit, as much as I like Steve Rogers the superhero, I'm really digging Steve Rogers the supervillain. He's pretty frightening. But there's other news that came out as to what to expect from Marvel Comics over the next few months. There's going to be a new event in Spider-Man. Back in December, Marvel announced a Venom 150 issue coming in May that was supposed to be the biggest Venom story in years, right?
Mm-hmm.
In February is going to be Venom issue number 4 that has both Spider-Man and a former Venom host, Mac Gargan, in the issue, meeting the symbiote's new host, Lee Price. There was a recent solicitation, or I should say there was a recent conversation with the series writer, and he said, quote, "I can say we do have plans for Eddie Brock. I can't say what they are, but stay tuned. In terms of other editorial goals, if readers look closely, there's an anniversary of some kind coming up, and it's kind of a momentous occasion," unquote. The anniversary coming is May. May of 2017 would be the 29th anniversary of the debut of the character of Venom from May of 1988 Amazing Spider-Man number 300. And there was an image that was also released with the story on IO9 that has a cover for Venom issue number 6 that seems to indicate what's old is new again. Take a look at this, because it simply has the Venom symbiote taking over somebody with a blonde hair flat top, proclaiming very vehemently, "We're back."
So they're going to make.
I don't think I have to give you 20. Again. That's the implication. Whether or not it's permanent, I do not know. It's supposed to be the most momentous Venom story in ages, but what would momentous mean? Does that mean the symbiote has to make a decision of its own? Especially if Lee Price, Matt Gargan, and Eddie Brock are in close proximity, and since the Venom symbiote was supposedly fixed, what does it do? Scary question, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, at least they're not going back to anti-Venom.
True that. And another announcement has come out about the new series Black Panther and the Crew. We talked about that before our little break. It is 5 of the more prominent African heroes in Marvel forming a, I don't want to say team, but let's say a group of codependency in Harlem. We talked about Jackson Butch Geiss, who was the artist who contributed character designs for the series. Marvel has officially announced that Jackson Geiss is going to be the artist on this series as well. I mean, I remember the character designs. The character designs were pretty striking, so if that's what he's going to produce throughout, I'm more interested. I admit that freely. You know, he did some pretty good work on the initial designs. It's not exactly in my wheelhouse as a comic book reader, but it's enough where I'll give it a shot, I would say. Which private detectives right now are running around the Marvel Universe?
I believe you were talking about Hawkeye and Jessica, right?
Sort of, because one of them doesn't exactly call herself Hawkeye.
Well,
her name is Kate Bishop.
That's what I know, as I have no idea what Kate Bishop, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, and Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
It turns out that Jessica Jones is going to invade Kate Bishop's office in an upcoming issue of Hawkeye. I don't know why they call it Hawkeye, because the most thing she does is she calls her agency Hawk Investigations. And it looks like the two of them are not exactly going to get along.
What a surprise.
Well, what? The forceful personality of Jessica Jones versus the forceful personality of Kate Bishop.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
Yeah, two opposites going at each other, yeah.
Yeah, this is not going to be a clean team-up of any sort. But that wasn't even my favorite news of this week when it came to comic books. Rocket Raccoon is getting a new series.
Yes, I saw that as well.
Yeah, he's getting a new series, and it's going to highlight his career as an intergalactic criminal. The Guardians of the Galaxy do what they do, but you got to remember, in between, Rocket Raccoon steals things. This is what he does. This is what he's good at. And he's gotten his own intergalactic heist crew from a set of 90s villains I haven't heard from in years called the TechNet. Jesse, you should be familiar with this because, believe it or not, the TechNet have been in something we've read on this show.
What?
Excalibur.
Oh, I barely remember that.
When Rachel Summers burst back into this universe after being held captive by Mojo for years, he sent the Warwolves after her to bring her back, but that wasn't the only group he sent. He sent a mercenary called Gatecrasher and her crew, the TechNet. Gatecrasher was kind of a 90s stereotype. Imagine Ursula the Sea Witch with regular arms and legs, but those arms are shaped like a gorilla, the legs are like a hippo, she's blue, and she dresses like an extra from the Misfits and Gemini Holograms.
That's an image.
My God, that just painted the ugliest image in my head, but unfortunately it's accurate. Anyway, she brought a group of mercenaries with them who are the most inept, ridiculously stupid people that you could imagine. 90s versions of villainy, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Except, it turns out they're more nihilistic than villains, you know? They were as fooled as anybody as to what the Gatecrasher was up to, so when she abandoned them on Earth. They were retrained by Nightcrawler, they agreed to do things more altruistically. It looks like they were released into the universe just to do whatever they do. And now they've fallen under another alpha in the form of Rocket Raccoon.
He's furry. He might remind them of Nightcrawler.
Might remind him of that little dimension hopper Gatecrasher kept on her shoulder. And the image wasn't done by Alan Davis, but it looked a lot like his work. I especially like the matching black on red suits. I'm actually excited for this series for reasons that don't make sense to me. Between Rocket Raccoon and his acerbic nature and then the TechNet as his supporting cast, oh my God, I need to read this.
Yeah, he's probably going to be cursing them out quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if they're as inept as they were in Excalibur, dear God, this will not go well in any stretch. A little bit of information has come out about the new Inhuman series coming post-Resurrection, Royals. It's supposed to focus on the royal family and their adventures in space.
Mm-hmm.
According to Al Ewing, who is the current writer of the series, Royals will take the Inhumans to travel the deepest reaches of Marvel space, seeking the secrets of their origins. Along the way, they're going to be joined by some unlikely alloys. Alloys? They're going to be joined by a lot of metal. No, they're going to be joined by unlikely allies, such as Marvel Boy, the Kree warrior from an alternative universe, and Al Ewing is promising one of the characters in this series is going to die. And this includes a lot of Inhumans mainstays, including Black Bolt, Karnak, Crystal, Medusa, and a few characters that have been picked up in the Uncanny Inhumans series, younger characters. And one of the first big things they have to run into to find out more about their origins, the Chitauri.
That's going to be a fun encounter.
I can't imagine it being anything positive. A few of the character designs have come out, and I know you guys don't know enough about the characters to form most opinions on most of it. I do remember when we talked about the Uncanny Inhumans and what they did to Crystal. Her redesign looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Take a look at what they've done for the version of Crystal and Royals. They have turned that way up.
Huh.
They've taken her basic costume. They didn't just make it sassy. It looks like they made it battle-ready.
It almost screams something out of Guardians of the Galaxy, to be honest.
Maybe. It seems like most characters have minor alternative looks. Most of them have some kind of poncho and or jacket to go with their particular costume. I do like this redesign. This is good work.
I don't know, the cowl on the back of the head kind of reminds me of a lot of stuff. A lot of the costumes I remember watching back in the 90s.
That's not a cowl.
Was that this
back of her head? That's her. Her hair is an unusual coloring. It has a black stripe of color running through the back of her head.
Oh, okay.
It turns out all the recent designs for the Royals was done by John Boy Myers, who was the artist who recently left the current Teen Titans run for unknown reasons. I don't know. I'm more interested to read this now that the Inhumans are back to a spacefaring people. They always seem to be a class of characters who are better set apart from most of the Marvel universe, probably because of their general power levels as being pretty up there.
Yeah.
You know, between Black Bolt, Medusa, Karnak.
Oh, I was just going to say, I like her cloaked version more than her jacket version. That's personal.
And
the jacket kind of reminds me too much of, like, Star-Lord, I think.
Yeah.
The jacket reminded me too much of the Leather Avengers days.
Wow.
Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
No, this Leather Avengers does not put a positive image in my head.
It's a pretty simple concept. There was an era of the Avengers where they didn't have costumes that were very complementary. There wasn't a running theme through their costumes. So their idea of identifying themselves as Avengers was basically take every character they have currently and put them in a leather bomber jacket. There you go. Instant team cohesion.
That seems like it might get in the way a lot.
It was not a fun choice aesthetically. You know, you basically took a whole lot of striking costumes and added this dash of brown to them. Last up in Marvel Comics news is a story about X-Men Gold. This is the series that's launching post-Resurrection. Kitty Pryde is in the lead of the current team of X-Men. And the writer of the series, Mark Guggenheim, by the way, the artist is also Adrian Saif. Mark Guggenheim decided to answer a few questions as to what's going on in this series. He did a Q&A with Newsarama, and he did decide to get a little specific. So one of his answers, quote, starting with Kitty, she's my favorite X-Man, so I knew I wanted her, but what she brings to the table is something new to her role. She's actually bringing tactics and strategy. She's obviously still got her powers, but in this role I've cast her in, she's the leader. She's out there calling the plays, so what she brings is her tactical ability. Wolverine is super useful in the sneak and creep and occasionally stab people capacity. Nightcrawler, the fact that he can teleport is a big help to the team. That's a unique power that you'll see come into play a lot in the action sequences in the book. Storm, obviously, is one of the most powerful X-Men, especially when her abilities are employed to their full effect, and it also really helps to have a flyer on the team. Colossus is a blunt instrument. Most teams have at least one Bruiser, and Colossus is the X-Men's. And finally, you've got Prestige, which is Rachel Gray's new identity. It's really useful to have a telepath, and one of the more fun things about writing Ray is figuring out new and different ways for her to use her powers offensively. So it's not just her firing psi blasts at people, but really getting into the applications of telepathy and the ability to read people's thoughts. There's a lot of fun to be had in that, unquote.
It's I mean, she's had a deep friendship, you know, she grew up on the X-Men, so, you know, ex-boyfriend. Storm actually kind of makes me a little worried just because she's been a team leader enough that I'm wondering if she's going to be kind of a dissenting influence as far as like, well, I wouldn't do it that way.
Well, that's something he actually answered in this Q&A because
okay.
We've seen what Storm's rule has done. You know, often the move she's made, either under Wolverine or on her own, is to separate mutants from the world at large, either via the school or the move into Limbo, right?
Mm.
Okay, listen to what Guggenheim said in this answer. Quote, "One thing I'm trying to do is strike a balance between the X-Men stories that are centered around mutants and X-Men stories that stem from purely external threats that aren't related to mutants. For the last several years, most X-Men stories have come out of situations where mutants were facing extinction or dealing with a particularly powerful mutant. In short, the books have become very mutant-centric. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's a comic book about mutants, after all. But under Kitty's leadership, the X-Men's mission statement is going to be to build relationships outside of the mutant community. I want to reflect that in the writing. I want the stories to be as much about the X-Men protecting a world that hates and fears them as much as about dealing with mutant issues. All of this relates to the X-Men's new status quo. They're going to be located in the middle of Central Park for a very specific reason. They want to reconnect with the rest of the world. So in order to be true to the vision that Kitty has for the team that we'll be setting up in X-Men Prime, it's important to strike that balance between mutant-centric stories and stories that don't involve mutants," unquote.
Well, it's going to be interesting when they blow up Central Park.
Well, I mean, they're not blowing it up. Well, it's going
Someone's going to blow it up.
Well, the thing is, they're not adding a tower to Central Park. The school is going to be in Central Park. The Xavier Academy will be in the middle of the place. So the X-Men are not separating themselves on any level anymore. They're in the middle of New York.
Yeah, it's kind of worrisome considering how many people do not like them.
But that's the idea, though. Nobody's ever going to like them if they keep themselves on an island apart, as they always do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that Professor Xavier did, it's something Cyclops did, something Storm did, something Wolverine did. Now the new kid has come along and decided that you can't hide. And I'm sure that comes from a couple of different standpoints of her being both a mutant and a Jewish character. The more you separate yourself, the less likely anyone's going to appreciate you. And, believe it or not, one of Guggenheim's writings is going to bring back some classics. Get this, quote, "There are a couple of surprises in there. We're going to introduce new incarnations of Pyro and Avalanche. Longtime readers of the X-Men know that both of those characters are dead, but Daniel Ketchum and I have a great affection for those characters, those power sets, and those particular threats. So we've got a new Avalanche and a new Pyro coming our way," unquote.
Interesting. So, all right.
The reason why they're bringing these characters in is because there's a new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants coming straight at them.
Oh, led by who?
That's the question. I mean, Pyro and Avalanche are a part of it, great, and the Brotherhood has several surviving members already, so it's a real question as to who's leading them, especially since Magneto seems to have his own agenda these days with the X-Men Blue, the all-new X-Men squad, the Time Lost.
Yeah, and I can't imagine Mystique having really given a crap about...
That's not really her play anymore. It used to be, when it was Freedom Force, but not now. And the last thing I'll give to you, because this is getting to drag a little bit for people who are not X-Men fans, Guggenheim answered a question from Newsarama about what is the mission statement of the X-Men now. His answer was, quote, "Basically, it's to get out of their self-imposed exile. The X-Men are no longer, at least for the time being, worrying about extinction or survival. They're looking forward to the future. And a big part of that future, in Kitty's mind, is reintegrating with society and getting out there even though the world hates and fears them. This means not just acting as heroes, but interacting with humans. If you're going to get people to stop hating and fearing mutants, the first step is to get them to understand mutants better. For the longest time, mutants, particularly the X-Men, have segregated themselves in Westchester, in Utopia, or on Genosha, in Limbo. The X-Men have had a long habit of separating themselves from society, so basically Kitty's big idea is that this is not a good approach. If you're going to get humans to trust mutants more, they got to know more about them and interact with them more, so she puts the X-Mansion smack in the middle of Central Park in New York. So all of the mutants, all of the X-Men, are front and center in a way they've never been before. Admittedly, she does this without a consideration for what the property taxes on a piece of real estate like Central Park are like. Kitty's hope and dream is that moving to Central Park fosters better relations between humans and mutants. And you're right, it's an evolution of Xavier's dream. One of the obvious metaphors here, in this case I think is pretty literal, is that Kitty is a student who returns to become the teacher. So she's taking some of Xavier's teachings, but she's interpreting them in her own way, unquote.
Mm. And you know, being in such a right, there'll be a lot closer to other known heroes.
Not only that, they could help fill a void now that the Fantastic Four is unavailable.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
I wonder if she took their tower.
Peter Parker has that tower.
Yeah, Peter Parker
right,
owns it right now. It's Parker Industries. So that makes me wonder if after they move in, suddenly they're going to get an envoy from Parker Industries just wondering, can we help you? But it looks like in issue 1, or at least in X-Men Prime, things are going to start off rather high because a few preview issues have been released. And so far, it's the X-Men Gold versus Terrax.
Oh, fun.
Look, if Squirrel Girl can beat him...
Oh, she's beating him too?
She's beat him in a one-on-one, fist-to-fist.
She's deceptively terrifying.
You know, I don't even know why you need superheroes anymore if Squirrel Girl is just going to stop everybody with a nut slap.
Yeah, well, she's with the U.S. Avengers.
Now we have DC Comic News. This is where we talk about the other major property and their comic book characters and stories coming to you now and in the future. DC has done a pretty good job solidifying some really good artists and writers for exclusive contracts, and they've just secured a few more. They've announced that artist Javier Fernandez currently working on Nightwing, and Jorge Jimenez currently working on Superman and the Super Son series to create comic book content solely for DC and Vertigo series. Javier Fernandez, currently working on Nightwing, responded to this press release saying, quote, "Nightwing? How could I not be excited when I was asked to work on something like that? When DC asked me to redesign one of the most iconic costumes, I knew exactly what Nightwing would look like. Professionally, it's hard to find something that I have been looking forward to more than the chance to create stories in Gotham with one of the most beloved characters at DC. I love my job," unquote. Let me see. The other gentleman, Jorge Jimenez, currently working on the Superman series and the Super Son series. Quote, "DC has made me feel at home over the years. I remember my first work on the Fringe series. I was extremely nervous but also very excited. I wanted to prove that I wasn't just passing through, that I had come to stay, and to eventually realize my dream to draw Superman. Now time has passed, my projects with DC have been increasingly important, and I've not only seen the day when I'm drawing Superman, but this year I had the opportunity to design Superman's son. Fan reaction has been incredible. Thank you," unquote. You know, I gotta admit, his design for a Superman's son has been pretty darn good. It's notable without being overdone. You know, it looks like something you would expect from Superman's kid between the cape and the blue jeans. Any opinions on those bits of news?
I just hope that they utilize them well.
Granted. Very much granted. DC has hired a new VP directly from Disney Comics, as it turns out. DC Entertainment has hired Michelle Wells as its new VP of Content Strategy. These corporate roles sound so complicated. Wells has come to the Burbank-based DC Comics after spending 5 years at Disney, including her most recent position as executive editor of digital content, where she worked on a number of projects, including the recent game Moana Rhythm Run. Early in her time at DC, she was also the senior editor of their comics and magazine, so it sounds like she's someone well-suited to both the contemporary and the current digital version of comic books. She's assuming a position that was vacant after John Cunningham was promoted in July to become DC's Senior Vice President of Sales and Trade Marketing. Sounds like a good hire for him.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot of talent hunting. I don't know.
Yep. The Suicide Squad and Justice League crossover has finished this past week. So finally we have an answer as to who may have sacrificed himself at the end. And it turns out the villain of the series is Eclipso.
Who's that?
I'm unfamiliar with that.
Eclipso's a long-time threat in DC Comics. He doesn't have the greatest of names, however, he is what you would consider the living embodiment of wrath and divine vengeance. Think of him as what the Spectre was originally based on if the Spectre had no compunction about killing everything just for the sake of anger and wrath. The difference, though, is that the Spectre visits wrath upon other people, whereas Eclipso drags wrath out of other characters. You know what I mean? Eclipso lives to kill, control, destroy, and torment. That is his thing. And Maxwell Lord, you know him, the telepath in DC Comics that has made a lot of trouble for its heroes. Maxwell Lord thought he figured out a way to wield Eclipso as a weapon. And as you can imagine, that blew up in his little face. So Eclipso turned America into a mob hell-bent on killing itself. So in other words, it's a real-life story. But, long story short, they had Eclipso on the ropes, and Batman determined the only way to really stop him was that if Killer Frost went into overdrive. But for her to do that, she was going to have to pull down a lot of energy. Which she typically pulls low levels of energy from people to keep herself sustained, but if she wants to create large effects, she has to pull down large amounts of thermal energy directly from people, eventually killing them, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So Batman offered himself up as a sacrifice. She was supposed to pull the energy directly out of him to do it, and she refused. Then she was surrounded by the available members of both the Justice League and the Suicide Squad, who offered to offer up all of the available energy they had to make this work. Which she did. And then then Amanda Waller gave Killer Frost the order to end Maxwell Lord's life, and believe it or not, Killer Frost said no. She refused to do it herself. And despite expending all of her energy and dying herself, and Waller's order was, of course, to take the energy she needed to survive from Lord directly, Frost still said no and passed out. It turns out that Frost was sustained by some unknown member of the cadre of the Justice League and the Suicide Squad. The current prevailing theory was that it was probably Superman to keep anybody from dying. And basically, Batman had an ultimatum for Amanda Waller. Commute her sentence now. Which appears Waller has agreed to, and this is how Killer Frost ends up on the Justice League of America. Though it's interesting character development. It really brings the idea that the Suicide Squad's members can actually grow beyond their roles as just, you put a bomb in my head, please don't make me do this. However, it does occur to me that if Killer Frost is going to continue this particular path, which, again, interesting, she might need a new name.
Yeah.
Because Killer Frost doesn't sound like something she either wants to be or is willing to do at this point.
No, that's not a name you want to be here coming saying, I'm going to rescue you.
Look, it's the Justice League of America. Here comes Batman. Here comes the Atom. Here comes Black Canary. There's Killer Frost and Lobo. Oh shit, kill me now. And the secret origin of Wonder Woman's Themyscira is playing out in a new series called Odyssey of the Amazons. It's being written by Underworld creator Kevin Garreau with art by Ryan Benjamin. The story is supposed to take the approach of an epic poem showing how Amazons were gathered from around the world to their new island home. I'm really looking forward to that series, frankly.
It sounds fascinating.
Well, there's got to be a story why this island in the DC universe is populated by nothing but immortal and very powerful women. And it can't be something as simple as, hey, look, I found this in the ocean. There should be more of a reason than that, and I'm glad somebody is filling in that particular gap in DC's continuity. DC is taking applications for his new artist workshop. They are looking for new and aspiring comic book talent, and part of that is the DC Entertainment's talent development team kicking off the 2017 Artist Workshop. Online applications are being accepted through March 1st at dccomictalentworkshop.com. The Writers' Workshop will begin accepting online applications on March 1st, and they will end the application process on March 31st. The talent workshops are typically led by all-star talent lineups including Jim Lee, Scott Snyder, Klaus Johnson, and Andy Kubert. The workshops are designed to give access and a voice to new and prospective talent and provide an opportunity to showcase their work following intensive workshop sessions. Man, it sounds like if you want to be a comic book artist, these are the guys you need to learn from.
Mm.
I mean, Jim Lee and Andy Kubert, who's the current Batman artist, Scott Snyder, one of the recent writers and artists on Batman. I mean, who else are you going to learn, dynamic composition from? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure it costs a bit to get into this workshop, but it sounds like it'd be very much worth the time. What do you guys think when comic books get political?
Yeah.
I'm moving on.
Don't tune out, because sooner or later this is going to actually, politics intersect your world more often than you think. We're going to get into that a little later. But what do you think when comic books get political? When they have a message beyond just must save everything?
It kind of rubs me the wrong way, only due to, I'm reading this to get away from reality, but at the same time, if they've got a good point, it can almost make its point better, just because, you can kind of draw from it what you want sometimes.
All right, well, DC Comics has taken a pretty extraordinary step. One of their comics is going to address the issue of gun violence in Chicago, which isn't exactly at its peak, but it's still at a relatively high level. I don't quite know why, if you're going to do this, they're going to do this in this particular series. The series that's addressing gun violence is Christopher Priest's Deathstroke series.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, Priest has said that this is his most violent issue of Deathstroke yet, which I would believe, but it's one of those cases where I mean, if it's just Deathstroke kind of rolling through the city while things are happening, I could kind of understand that. If this is the message of gun violence is bad, this is not exactly the series that I would expect you to bring that message through. What's Deathstroke's message here? Gun violence is bad? Use your knives instead. You know what I mean? I like it when comic books intersect the real world, not because I need them to be portrayed in the real world, but it's interesting to see sometimes how these characters who have such extreme viewpoints react to things that normal people have to deal with. It's like how John Romita Jr. was talking about when he did the issue of Spider-Man that had to do with 9/11.
Yeah.
It's not the best story, and it can seem like just a big cash grab, but sometimes if you nail the voice just right and see how these people are reacting to trauma, or at least, I don't even want to say more normalized trauma, but more conventional forms of trauma, sometimes it can help you crystallize what you're viewing in your own eyes. I guess that's the best way I could put that.
Mm.
Last up in DC Comic News, ScreenRant.com via Matthew Bird, they put together a list of what they consider to be the 15 best DC comic storylines ever. I've been very curious about this simply because I know I'm not a DC fan, but DC has come out with some really iconic series over the years, or stories, and I wonder what some people would consider to be the best DC comic stories ever.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is a special caveat in this, in that they did not take Vertigo comics into consideration. They're talking about stories that happen in the main DC universe. A fair caveat, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Number 15 on this list was the Sinestro Corps War. That was the story of the first time outside of Green Lanterns there was an actual cadre of ring slingers. And I gotta admit, it was intense to read. I read that as it came out, and I was thoroughly hooked. It caused me to read Green Lantern comics for a very long time. Oddly enough, the story that led into Blackest Night was what dragged me out of Green Lantern comics.
Mm.
But I do think the Sinestro Corps War is pretty well underrated these days. You can't even find trade paperbacks for the most part because they just don't print them. A little odd, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, especially for something that really kind of succeeded for them.
Well, it's also one of those stories that works outside of the timeline it was written in. You read that several years later, it's still a good story. Number 14 on this list is Hikatea.
What?
Hikatea. It's a Wonder Woman story. And I'm not familiar with this at all. I take it I should read blurb?
Yeah.
Quote, Wonder Woman, much like Aquaman, isn't usually associated with the best DC stories. Despite being one of DC's big three, Wonder Woman hasn't always been treated with the same level of respect that Batman and Superman typically receive. One glowing exception to that unfortunate trend is the 2002 one-shot issue Hikatea. The comic's name references the name of a vow that Wonder Woman makes to protect a young girl by the name of Danielle Wellis. Right from the start, Wonder Woman has some doubts regarding Danielle, but her honorable nature inspires her to stay true to her word. That word becomes much harder to keep when Batman shows up to capture the young Danielle for previous crimes. Hikatea is the kind of story that Wonder Woman should have received many, many years ago. It's not a reinvention of the Wonder Woman character so much as it is a different perspective on what distinguishes her from other comic heroes. At a brisk pace, this comic examines what honor in the world of superheroes really means while delivering thrill after thrill, unquote. Intriguing.
Yeah.
I like the description. Number 13 on the list is JSA The Golden Age. Wow. Okay. I'm not familiar.
Yeah.
Quote, The Golden Age is an Elseworlds tale, and not the last one we'll be talking about on this list. As with all other Elseworlds stories, the Golden Age is based on a premise that involves the question, what if? In this case, the fantastic scenario play involves the Justice Society of America members who've retired following the events of World War II. While they adjust to life in a world that no longer seems to respect them or their ideas, a new group of heroes take their place and try to find purpose in a country that no longer seems worth fighting for. The basic idea shares similarities with the premise of The Watchmen and some other stories, but the Golden Age is much more interested in examining the often romanticized view of post-war America from a haunting new perspective. The Golden Age is a war of ideas that any modern American will be able to relate to. While it does rely on a few absurd comic conventions to get its point across, The Golden Age is a remarkably relevant story that dares to examine the damage that fear can cause, unquote. That sounds like the kind of story that should be read today. The next one's a Batman tale. Number 12 is Batman, The Black Mirror. Anybody?
Mirror.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this one.
Yeah.
Quote, The Black Mirror is a Batman tale for a new generation. In this universe, Dick Grayson has assumed the role of the Dark Knight and is struggling to really come to terms with his new role. He still lives in the shadow that Bruce Wayne's Batman has cast over the city of Gotham, him and everybody else. But the same cannot be said of the city's criminals who are testing the new Batman's limits. Into this scenario comes an old face whose ability to spread fear may be greater than the Batman's. Now, all who fight for hope in Gotham must look deep within themselves if they are to fight for another day. With The Black Mirror, Scott Snyder did what some thought was impossible and gave us a definitive Batman tale for the modern age. His story is one of generations and legacies. Much like how the Joker forced Bruce Wayne to come to terms with his darker side, the arrival of a new threat forces Dick Grayson and those close to him to come to terms with the fact that they're all damned to a life of war and horror. It's truly haunting, unquote. That sounds like the kind of story I need to read.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool. Number 11 is not something I've read, but even people who don't read DC Comics are tangentially aware of it. The Red Sun.
Okay, I've heard of this. Yeah,
It's an Elseworlds story where what if Superman landed in Soviet Russia?
Correct.
Right?
Yes, and the effect that a Soviet Superman would have on the world.
Yeah, I remember that coming out. I thought it was interesting. Never picked it up.
Me either. The synopsis says that the essence of a story is the nature versus nurture. You know, are you a man of your genetics or are you a man of your environment? And this sounds like the kind of story that really examines that. Number 10 on the list, though, is a story that we are aware of, though not because of comics, but because of multimedia. Justice League of America, The Tower of Babel.
Ah, yeah.
That's a story where somebody has stolen Bruce Wayne's what if the Justice League goes rogue plans,
Right.
and is carrying them out.
Yeah, I think...
And, I haven't read the comics, but the animated story it's based on, Justice League Doom, really good.
Yes, I do like that. I watch it again every now and then.
Number 9 on this list is The Return of Barry Allen.
Which time?
I should just read it. I'm sure none of us have read it. Quote, following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, Wally West replaced Barry Allen as The Flash. As tends to be the case with such dynamic shifts in status quo, some readers were slow to accept the new Flash. Others just hated him outright. The return of Barry Allen was inspired in part by that negative reception. In this story, the one and only Barry Allen returns as Wally West is still trying to find his own place in the world. As if that wasn't bad enough for young Wally, he also begins to notice that something isn't quite right about the recently returned Barry. The return of Barry Allen is a coming-of-age story and a mystery. While the many surprises that come from the unraveling of the details of Barry Allen's return are thrilling, it's the story of Wally West becoming the true hero that steals the show. Anyone who has ever struggled to find their place in the world, especially if they've been compared to a sibling or someone else close in their life, will immediately relate to this expertly placed plot about what it takes to find the strength to be your best, unquote. I'm not usually a Flash reader. I can't say that makes you want to read The Flash, but it does sound like a good kind of story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can understand the premises that you set up there.
Yeah. Number 8 is actually a Teen Titans story, The Judas Contract.
Oh, yeah. We're going to do an animated
that
feature of it soon.
Yeah, The Judas Contract is an infamous story in both DC and Teen Titans of Terra.
Mm-hmm.
The Teen Titans' most infamous traitor. And it doesn't seem to matter how many times that character comes back. When she comes back, she's almost immediately killed, or nobody likes her anyway, so she dies on her own. And I understand why it's a good story. It's also kind of a creepy story when you realize that 30-year-old Deathstroke is sleeping with 16-year-old Terra.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. But, like I said, I understand why it's a great story. It is the ultimate in, what happens when you can't trust your own roster. You know what I mean? Number 7 was something I'm tangentially aware of, but I never really knew the history behind the story. Batman, The Long Halloween.
Long Halloween?
Yes, I've heard of this story. I've never read it, and I was only basically aware of what it is. I take it read?
Yes.
Quote, Gotham City is no stranger to murders, but the death of mobster Johnny Vitti on Halloween is one that every citizen of the city will likely remember for years to come. It served as the first in a string of bizarre murders that occurred on every major holiday. Someone was targeting Gotham's mobsters, and for once, it wasn't Batman. The mystery of who was bringing down the city's underworld would consume some of Gotham's most prominent inhabitants and forever change the dynamic of crime in Gotham. With The Long Halloween, writer Jeff Loeb effectively used Batman as the lead in a noir gangster story worthy of Humphrey Bogart. You could argue that at the heart of this story is the identity of the mysterious holiday killer, but focusing on that lone, albeit incredible, aspect really does diminish the scope of this tale. The Long Halloween is a story that finally tells us how supervillains came to replace mobsters in Gotham. It became the first comic to acknowledge the Batman animated series version of Two-Face's origin, and it makes comics canon. Most importantly, it set an unbeatable precedent for how good a Batman detective story could be, unquote.
I would like to read this.
It does sound intriguing just on that blurb. Number 6 is a story that I hear about a lot. It's a Superman story. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow? It's referenced a lot when we talk about Superman stories, but it's not something I read. I'm not a Superman reader by any stretch. Quote, the year is 1997, and Superman has been missing for 10 years. Some recall the circumstances that preceded his disappearance, but nobody's entirely sure what happened to the Man of Steel. In an effort to uncover the full story, a journalist by the name of Tim Crane visits Lois Lane. Believed to be the last person to have seen Superman alive, Lois begins to recall what some believe to be the final moments of his life in order to finally answer the question posed in the story's title. It would be a crime to spoil the exact answer to that question, especially as Alan Moore's defining Superman story is still well worth the time of anyone who appreciates great storytelling. What can be said is that events that lead to Superman's disappearance rank among the most challenging moments. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow maximizes the potential of some of Superman's B-villains and uses them as a catalyst to a story that finally forces Superman to come to terms with the idea that he might not be around forever. The ending might not be the canonical end of Superman, but it's hard to think of a better one, unquote.
Basically, it's third person, that makes Superman think, I'm not invincible.
Yeah, that doesn't make it as strong of a must-read to me as like the Batman stuff we've read on this list, but the fact that Alan Moore is writing Superman does make me curious to at least flip it,
Yeah.
Number 5 on this is almost inescapable when it comes to talking about DC and its continuity. The Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Mm.
Do you know what that is?
Multiverse thing. A couple of people died, including Barry Allen.
Oh, wow, it's way more important than that.
Yeah, I understand this, but that's like what I picked up from this seeing pictures.
Okay, let me just read the blurb instead of trying to explain it. Quote, in the mid-'80s, DC executives realized that their creative practice of using multiple universes in order to cover up some of the gaping canonical plot holes left over from the Golden and Silver Ages was no longer sustainable. They decided that some kind of order needed to be established. Marv Wolfman and a team of artists were given the seemingly impossible task of bringing every DC universe together as part of an event that would unite them forever. What they came up with was quite possibly the greatest major comic book event of all time. Though the use of being known as the Anti-Monitor, Wolfman and company were able to bring together the multiverses by ensuring their equal destruction. Rather than treat the various versions of famous characters as a creative hindrance, Wolfman recognized that he was able to create a seemingly infinite series of moments that no fan would have ever dared imagine before. If you ever want to know how beautifully chaotic comics can get, Crisis on Infinite Earths is the story for you. Unquote. The Crisis collapsed the multiverse.
Yeah.
It brought all of DC's heroes, for better or for worse, or at least the ones they wanted to keep, onto one Earth. And I would safely say that post-Crisis, that's been the basis for just about every version of the DC universe has come thereafter. Number 4 is something that no comic book fan, no matter how casual or hardcore, is a stranger to. The Dark Knight Returns.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to read the blurb or just go on? Because I think The Dark Knight Returns is one of those stories that's just hard to ignore.
To be honest, I've heard a lot. I've never actually read the comic myself, although I do remember one year, junior college over here actually had it as a textbook.
Dude, The Dark Knight Returns is pretty much I'll let the writer speak. Quote,
yeah.
What is there left to say about The Dark Knight Returns? Along with Batman Year One, this is the comic that is regularly credited with establishing the version of Batman that we know and love today. It's also credited for helping to usher in a new era of mature, darker storytelling in comics that led to many of the entries on this list. What more is there to say about The Dark Knight Returns? How about the fact that it remains one of the most compelling examples of the power of comic books as a storytelling medium, despite the fact that it has inspired so many other classic works? The Dark Knight Returns represents the first time that many readers encountered a version of Batman who no longer believes in himself or his mission. He is crippled by doubt, and he's convinced himself that he no longer needs to be Batman. His return to that role is both selfish and noble. This is the story of what happens when a superhero refuses to let go, and how even the strongest of men can have everything they believe in destroyed by time, unquote. You know, the Dark Knight Returns was one of those weird future imperfect stories where Bruce Wayne, he was practically suicidal. He found a moment in that story where he even says, this could be a good death, and I think he's like Formula 1 racing, he's spinning out a little bit, but, you know, his instincts kick in and he self-rights the car, and he's almost disappointed by the fact that he survived that moment just because he's reached that age where being Batman's no longer feasible. But of course, you know, sooner or later in that series, he gets back into the Batsuit and starts kicking ass again. Number 3 on this list is a series I've tried to read, but I just haven't been able to get through. All-Star Superman.
What's that?
I'll let the writer explain. Quote, when it was announced that Grant Morrison was going to start his All-Star Superman run, fans wondered what plans he had in mind. The popular theory was that Morrison was going to essentially reboot the character and adapt him for a more modern age. Morrison had a different idea. Instead of reinventing Superman, he wanted to remind us all why we loved the character in the first place. To do so, he crafted a story revolving around Superman learning he has about a year left to live. In his final days, Clark Kent must get his life in order. The unwavering nobility of Superman has long been a source of controversy among comic fans. Some even mock him for it. What All-Star Superman does better than just about any other Superman story is explain why Superman's nobility is, in fact, his greatest quality. Having just learned he's about to die, Superman proceeds to spend what may very well be his final hours doing everything he can to make the world a better place. This is an unwavering reminder of why Superman is indeed the world's greatest hero, unquote. I get why the writer likes it, it's just I've never been able to read Superman very well, and Grant Morrison, to me, he spends way too much time making Superman into a religious figure. You It's always been one of the weaknesses of Morrison's writing, in my opinion, whenever he gets his hands on Superman. Number 2 on this series, number 2 should have been number 1, in my opinion. It is an infamous what-if story when it comes to DC Comics. Kingdom Come.
Oh, that's the one. Oh, yeah, that's the one where the heroes end up fighting each other.
Yeah, that was the one who had the interiors, not the covers. The interiors done by Alex Ross, and it wasn't just heroes fighting heroes. It was generation versus generation, if you recall. The original heroes were up against their successors.
Right. And it all came down to Billy Bastion, right?
It came down to Billy Bastion versus Superman. Captain Marvel versus Superman. And, wow. I mean, I can't harp on this series enough. Again, I am not a DC reader, but I will always acknowledge a great story, and this was a great story. You felt how frustrated Superman and Batman were about how they were unable to change the world. You could understand why the current superheroes were a little bit out of control because they were doing their best to stop villains by any means necessary, and why the two sets of ideals just could not do anything other than clash. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it set up these really interesting takes on what an aged Batman would need in a suit to save his life. What would a frustrated Superman do with the rest of the world, and how badly Wonder Woman just wanted to kick both of these old geezers in the ass and get them back in line. It's an amazing story. If you ever have a chance to pick it up digitally or hard copy, I fully recommend sitting down and reading all... God, for 4 issues, they were all mini trades, so it must have been about 180 pages worth of story. And it is gorgeous to look at with Alex Ross doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
I can't harp on it enough. Now, this, again, is a story by ScreenRant.com of what they consider to be the 15 best DC comic stories of all time. And number one, I do not like. I do not like it at all, and I've tried, but to me it's dated storytelling. I don't think it works very well today.
Killing Joke?
No. That actually was not on this list at all.
Yeah, that was surprising.
To me, too. Number 1 on this list, The Watchmen. Now, I say that with heavy caveats. I understand why people like this series. I understand why they liked it then. I understand why they like it now. But, I first read this story about 4 years ago, and to me, as a first-time reader, it does not hold up well. It's very much a product of its time, 80s and the paranoia regarding nuclear war at the time. Reagan era of American society, basically. Mm-hmm. And these heroes spend so much time, and I mean like Rorschach and the Comedian and the Silk Spectre, both versions of, Owlman, both versions of, Ozymandias, Dr. Manhattan. They spend so much time lamenting themselves that it amazes me they ever got anything done.
A bunch of woe-is-me characters.
Yeah, and I've always had my biggest issues with those kind of stories. It's like when I see a cover that says, Peter Parker has quit being Spider-Man, my first thought is, again? Isn't that the 5th time you've dumped that costume in a garbage can? And I have the same feeling when it comes to comic book movies. I don't like it when people go through this weird trial and tribulation to get themselves a costume. They develop these strange abilities, but at their first major setback, usually their first response is, I can't do it anymore. You've been a hero for like 8 hours. And to me, that's what The Watchmen is stretched out into 12 issues. Yes, their histories are much longer than the average movie, but at the same time, these guys have been at it long enough, and they have their support systems in place, but none of them seem to use it. For a bunch of guys who are all on the same team, they spend a lot of time complaining to themselves about themselves. It almost seems like Hugo Strange could have fixed this universe. So, again, I get it. I know why people enjoy The Watchmen, but to me, that doesn't belong near the top of this list. Number 10? Probably, but not number 1. Now we have general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. And first up is something near and dear to our particular hearts.
Okay. That is?
The San Diego Convention Center expansion project just cleared a hurdle.
Okay.
Now that the Chargers have moved out of San Diego and have gone to Los Angeles, that pretty much ended all discussion about a stadium expansion to this thing, which would have not been part of the building. It would have been this separate complex, like about 3/4 to a full mile away from the convention center, which was not a good idea, in my opinion. But a Superior Court judge named Joel Wolfel ruled that the Waterfront Convention Center expansion is legally sound and compliant with the California Coastal Act, which was part of the lawsuit that originally blocked the expansion project. They claimed it wasn't compliant with the California Coastal Act. Now a Superior Court judge has said, yes, it is. So, does that mean they will start working on it? No. Because now that that's been cleared, there is still the matter of how exactly to pay for it. If you recall, last time they proposed this project, the city was going to enact like a 2% raise in hotel tax to get this paid for, but unfortunately the one part of that lawsuit that was correct, that barred the project, said that a tax increase has to go before voters.
Right.
Okay.
So that is the next step. Not necessarily a tax increase, but how precisely will the proposed convention center expansion be paid for. And the expansion, what it would do is extend the convention center into the park that is next to Hall H. Basically, the convention center would now run right up against that street that's between the Hilton Bayfront and the convention center. And not only would it expand the lower hall that far, but it would also build on top of it the same distance.
Okay.
So, more meeting space. In addition to which, on the harbor side, the backside of the convention center, they would add not just a few outdoor shops that could be inhabited by food retailers, they would also add a rooftop park that could be accessed from the outside.
Oh.
And
That
it wouldn't
could
just
be
be
at night?
Yeah, it wouldn't be just that angry staircase that makes Jesse make these grunting noises that are truly horrible. No, they would put a ramp the length from the end of the convention center all the way up to the staircase that doubles back on itself so you could access this park without actually entering the building.
That could be a great play for shoots.
It would also be a great way to work out your calves walking that distance uphill.
I'm not looking forward to that either.
That might be one of the few cases where Jesse will look up and say, "We'll take the stairs." But even though the pre-sale date has still not been announced for Comic-Con, the first 2 waves of guests have been announced for Comic-Con. I assume this is not one of those questions where I need to ask you guys, are you going to Comic-Con? It's a matter of when are we going to Comic-Con, correct?
Right.
Okay. You know, I know we're all pulling back our respective budgets, but that is just one of those conventions you do not skip if you have the opportunity.
Yeah, well, especially because getting back in would be a bitch.
True enough. According to the Toucan blog, the first wave of guests, writer of Poppies of Iraq, Bridget Fendakli, artist of 100 Bullets, Moonshine, and Torpedo, 1972, Eduardo Risso, the writer and artist on Dungeon, Eileen, and Poppies of Iraq, Louis Trondheim, and the artist, animator, director, producer of Batman and Harley Quinn and Batman the Animated Series, Bruce Timm, is making an appearance in 2017.
Nice.
That is a panel that will be full. You know, if you don't show up to that line 2 hours ahead of time, you are not getting in, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
But that was the first wave of guests. You want the second one?
Okay.
All right.
Cartoonist on Bone and RASL, Jeff Smith. Writer and publisher and comics historian of the Jack Kirby collector, John Morrow. The writer and artist on Roller Girl and The Great Pet Escape, Victoria Jamison. And the writer on Dark Knight, A True Batman Story, and Batman the Animated Series, Paul Dini, is going to Comic-Con.
Dini and Tim? Holy crap.
Dini and Tim, man. It is a Batman Animated Series reunion right there in San Diego.
Just missing Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy.
And those
How
were
many
the
more waves
first
we got left to announce?
8, a minimum of 8 more waves of guests. So, I can imagine the first thing it's safe to say is that this may be the first panel where you have to fight Kevin Smith to get in.
No, he'll just be on the guest list.
No, I mean physically. He may actually punch people to get into this one. He may go all owl puncher on us. In further convention news, we talked before about George Perez. He made a promise that he would not go to a convention in a state that endorsed Donald Trump's candidacy via the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Some people have said that he has gone back on that promise already. Here we are in February. The story came out February 3rd. George Perez would actually say that he has followed up on that promise. because he is attending 2 conventions that are in red states. Okay?
Okay.
The reason why he says they're not really breaking his promise is because he's not going to comic conventions. Number 1, George Perez has announced he's going to Dragon Con. That is a big nerd culture convention, but I would say he's correct, it's not a comic convention. That is more multimedia and entertainment based. Okay?
Yeah.
And he says it's very important to actually go to that because a great majority of party goers are to him the people that are being ostracized by current presidential policies, including the LGBT community. So any money that he earns at Dragon Con will be donated to an LGBT charity. Okay?
I said I can get behind him on that.
Okay. The other convention that he says does not break his rule about visiting conventions in red states is probably one that would allow him to keep his promise, because he's going to Fetish Con. It's not... Yeah, as you can imagine, that's not a comic book show either.
No.
He has said that he's receiving no money for his appearances at Fetish Con, nor does he earn money. He's just there to support his friends, who, again, he feels the people that would go to this particular convention are the people who would not be treated well by current presidential policy.
I can get behind him on that, too.
Yeah. And he even added in a statement, quote, "And for the record, even though it is really no one else's business, I plan to donate the fees I earn at the blue state shows to charity as well. But they won't necessarily be the same red state threatened organizations. This would include the Hero Initiative, St. Jude's Hospital, Canines for Warriors, Make-A-Wish, and whatever worthy causes come my way. Oh, and for those wondering, I do intend to continue to provide financial aid to the threatened charities I noted earlier, even though it won't be earned at red state shows. It will just be from other sources of income. I do not wish to continue defending or explaining my decision, so I hope this is the last time I will be asked to do so," unquote.
He can hope.
Yeah, I wish him all the best.
It's a reasonable statement, but, it's the internet, and reason doesn't often prevail on the internet.
In any shape or form.
Speaking of a lack of reason, Wizard World has informed exhibitors that effective immediately, it's no longer accepting credit cards as a form of payment for booths or tables at any of its events.
Cash only, or what?
Cash or check only. Could you imagine being an exhibitor trying to send thousands of dollars via cash or check?
Well, I would assume they would have to accept money orders.
I would hope so, but according to a statement they've given to exhibitors, checks must be received at the Los Angeles office 7 days prior to the first day of load-in.
Wait,
so
what?
It's great, you don't have to send it out immediately, but at the same time, for frick's sake, people.
That's very inconvenient. What the hell?
Why would you not accept credit cards anymore?
I don't know. If no check is received within 7 days prior to the first day of load-in, exhibitors will be required to pay on-site with either a bank or cashier's check or cash. No personal checks will be accepted on-site. Exhibitors that pay on-site will not receive booth placement until payment is remitted." Unquote. There's actually no reason that was given by Wizard World as to why they will no longer accept credit or electronic payment. To which I say, seriously, considering what we've read about what their executives have been doing with money recently, I do not want to give these people cash.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is that every time you do those debit, credit, or electronic payments, there's some kind of hidden fee that's being accrued.
There usually is,
but
that fee is like point-something cents on the dollar. And when you consider how much it costs for people to exhibit, which is usually in the thousands of dollars, I'm sure Wizard World is making out well ahead.
Yeah. And, I mean, I understand why they will take no personal checks there and why they want them to hit 7 days before is so that they can verify that, the checks aren't going to bounce and so forth, But still, saying they won't accept checks on site. Well, that's the reason why.
Just cash or something else. I mean, I'm sorry, but again, Wizard World hasn't had the best run with its executives and money recently. If I start giving them envelopes of money, I'm going to be really concerned that the first thing they do is go outside and talk to their dealer. I haven't been to a Wizard World convention since they closed down Wizard World Long Beach, and now I'm even less inspired to go if they're going to make this. If they're making it that much of a pain in the ass for the exhibitors, can you imagine the attitude you're going to get when you're trying to buy something from these people?
Mm.
I mean, they're going to be either angry or depressed, and not one of those is fun to buy anything from. In other not great news, Bernie Wrightson has announced he's retiring from comic books.
And he does...
Bernie Wrightson is one of the co-creators of the Swamp Thing. If there's a guy who deserves a living legacy in comics, obviously he's one of them. There was a statement that was released by the family via his wife, Liz Wrightson. Quote, "I apologize for our silence the past few months. Last November, Bernie began failing again and having obvious problems with his perception. He had to undergo yet another brain surgery to relieve bleeding and then spend several weeks undergoing inpatient rehabilitation. Unfortunately, it appears that he has lasting damage. He has extremely limited function on his left side and is unable to walk or reliably use his left hand, among other limitations. We've come to the sad conclusion that he is now effectively retired. He will produce no new art, and he is unable to attend conventions. Should the situation change, I will happily announce it here. He can still sign his name. In fact, he was signing Kickstarter prints in the hospital, and is otherwise pretty healthy and has good cognition. We expect to continue releasing signed prints and offering occasional pieces of art for sale from the collection that remains. We both thank you for all of your continuing support and good wishes. All of our best, Liz and Bernie Wrightson," unquote. Bernie Wrightson was in comics for 38 years. 38 years. And, you know, he co-created Swamp Thing with another guy whose health has been struggling lately, Len Wein.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm glad he's still alive, I really am, but it sounds like they're right. Under those circumstances, why would he even appear at conventions if he can't use the left side of his body?
Yeah. I mean, that's just going to create such a trial for him to get around, especially if you've got conventions like the one where they wouldn't even offer the guy a wheelchair because of union rules.
Yeah, that was
deal with that kind of
that was WonderCon and Len Wein in question, actually, when that happened. But I was thinking more in the terms of the casual comic book fan, and I know people generally are more empathic than they imply on the internet. However, I can only imagine what kind of jackasses would sit in the back of the room while Bernie Wrightson's trying to answer questions with half of his face unable to work. You know, and I feel for the guy, but I understand why he's not doing conventions anymore. Diamond Distributors have released their internal awards, and believe it or not, there's two companies that have to share the honor of Publisher of the Year.
Really? Who?
Yes.
Who impressed?
DC Comics.
Okay.
You had a really good 2016 with Rebirth, man. The stories that were coming out of that are really good. But who do you think took the other title? Who do you think took the other half of Publisher of the Year?
Marvel?
No.
Yeah, I was sure it was going to be Marvel.
Well,
no.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a story otherwise.
Boom Studios.
Boom Studios did it.
Really?
Nice.
Yes.
That was a shot in the dark.
Boom Studios took the other half of Publisher of the Year, which is really amazing for a studio that right now is, what, 5th ranked in comic book sales, I think? That's a strong statement by Diamond.
Yeah.
You know, and Boom Studios actually tied with Image Comics for 3rd place with the most awards at 4.
Huh.
They even placed ahead of Viz Media, who came at 5th.
Boom Studios primarily does a lot of stuff for Disney, right?
They do some, but not a lot. Boom Studios is more of an independent publisher. If they had a specialty, I'd say it's revitalization. You know, Boom Studios takes a lot of older properties and gives them a new face in comic books. They're the ones doing the current run of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Okay.
Marvel did win the award for top dollar market share publisher of the year. In other words, they sold the most comics.
Not surprising there.
So, you know, I think that's pretty awesome for both DC and Boom. DC earns it by artistic merit, but Boom earns it just because, you know, Boom Studios doesn't have a lot of comics, but what they're producing really does make you take a second look at things from your childhood and say, maybe it wasn't that bad.
There's some quality in their work.
Yeah. Now, this is where I say politics has crossed our lives irrevocably. Remember I was talking about that before, how politics just seems to enter into everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out current presidential policies may affect comic books rather significantly.
Oh?
Yes. President Donald Trump has said before that one of his major issues on the campaign trail, at least, was the trade agreements that that America has with its North American allies, primarily Canada and Mexico, if not, the Trans-Pacific stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It turns out this may be a really big problem for comic readers because, as Steve, who works for a printing company, is well aware, printing companies are not generally based in the U.S. The biggest printing companies in North America are based in Canada. So, if Trump follows through with his policies and decides to add tariffs to get these companies to start adding American jobs, even though they're not American companies, that means that the companies may decide it's cheaper to print comics internally in the U.S. instead of in Canada and Mexico, which would raise labor costs, which would raise overall costs, which would raise comic book costs. See where I'm going with this?
Yep.
So people who've been complaining that I remember when comic books were 75 cents, why are they $4 and $5 now? This may be just the tip of the iceberg if the current presidential administration has its way. So this is
I didn't
why
realize that those countries were where they printed most of the comic books, but yeah, because
as a matter of fact, the two biggest comic book printers, Transcontinental and Quebecor.
Yeah, well, we
used to be Quebecor.
Quebecor divested itself of American holdings.
Right, but as you can imagine, that sounds good because that means these companies would have to add some sort of American jobs, except, Steve and I have both worked in a printing plant, and it may sound terrific, but it requires a lot less people than you think it does to print these things.
Yeah, well, especially with print dying, it is a slow process, but it's happening.
Yeah. So if Trump is successful in renegotiating or ending the North American Free Trade Agreement, comic book prices could probably double. Not good news for us.
No.
The writer of the movie...
The other effect that it could have is just further push the electronic distribution and really start killing the actual print form. Could be.
I doubt people would stop reading comic books because generally it's more of a fan base item than an economic one. But unfortunately, the other thing it could do is really reduce the number of comic books out there because, after all, it's much harder to upsell. It's much harder to tell people, if you like this series, you'll really like this one, then pull it off the rack and show it to them when people are specifically targeting certain series and have no potential to, look left or look right and say, well, that looks good.
Right.
So this may not kill comic books as a storytelling medium, but it would probably, as Steve said, push people to digital, which would then suddenly reduce the number of comic books because people will stop experimenting, or at least reduce it significantly. Still, not good news for our medium.
Yeah, well, I mean, electronic-wise, I'm sure they will figure out a way to still entice upsales and so forth, but yeah, it doesn't help things locally at that point because now you're screwing over your comic book retailers.
Yep. So, it sounds like the thing that I've come to expect from the current administration. Yes, he'll add a few jobs at the bereft of many more. The screenwriter from the movie Arrival, which is currently up for Academy Awards, they've gone to Valiant and they're writing a new series called Secret Weapons. This is supposed to bring back elements of Valiant's 1990s continuity from writer Eric Hessier and Raoul Allen. It's supposed to focus on 4 new characters, led by the Valiant character Livewire, who were secretly activated by the Harbinger Foundation a long time ago, but were hidden from the world because Keiichi Harada deemed their powers to be of no use to him. The team will face off with a major Valiant villain from the 90s called Rexo, who is yet to appear in the current rebooted Valiant continuity. That sounds like it could be interesting. Superheroes from rejects, basically. That sounds kind of cool.
I said that's definitely a new story for them.
Yeah, I would say so. And last up in general comic news, there's a new Judge Dredd comic coming.
Really?
Yeah, it's coming out via IDW, but in his newest mission, it's been a while since the last time we've seen Judge Dredd, literally.
Mm-hmm.
The first details about the series is being written by Ulysses Farinas and Eric Freitas. The art's by Dan McCade and Ryan Hill. It's being called Judge Dredd: The Blessed Earth. It picks up 10 years after the events of the second volume of Mega City Zero, and has only served to make Judge Dredd more hard-edged in his quest to bring law to a lawless land. It's been described as the most Mad Max Judge Dredd has ever been. In other words, he's not in the Mega City. He's out on the cursed Earth by himself, trying to bring law to the lawless. According to the writer, Ulysses Farinas, quote, "It's much easier to write Judge Dredd when you feel like your country is falling apart," unquote.
Wow.
He said this over email. He went on to say, quote, "It's really easy to write about failing institutions and people left to their own devices when the people who should protect them are trying to legitimize their power. We here to serve and protect, and it sounds more like a sick joke. We are turning Dredd literally inside out, ripping out what's inside him and seeing what makes him keep moving forward. The system only works when people believe in it, and in the blessed earth, 'I am the law' are not words anyone believes in," unquote. Okay, with that description, minus the obvious political barb there, with that description, you have my attention. Because the prior Judge Dredd series, when he says, "I am the law," everybody cowered in fear because he meant it. Now when he says, "I am the law" out on the cursed earth, the basic reaction, I'm sure, is, who in the hell are you? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And his fellow co-writer, Eric Freitas, apparently his plans for the Blessed Earth came down to a much more simple phrasing. Quote, "We want to make motherfuckers cry," unquote.
Huh.
You know what? Again, minus the the expletive there. I'm actually interested to see where this goes. That sounds like a fun story. Judge Dredd out of his comfort zone and by himself? That sounds pretty cool.
It will be an interesting story.
Sounds like they already did it with the Stallone version of the movie, but
Well, they didn't, though, because Judge Dredd wasn't on the cursed earth to bring law. He was just escaping.
Right.
He didn't stay there. And besides which, we both know that movie had no writers. I think that was the one time when I introduced that British creator who worked on that at Great American Comic-Con. I think that's when I scared him. Because he had worked on 2000 AD in the original Judge Dredd comics. I don't remember his name specifically, but the guy had a history, or he made his bones doing Judge Dredd as an artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people didn't know who he was, and I asked, "Do you know who this is?" And everybody just kind of stared at me blankly, and I said, "This is the man whose work inspired 2 movies, and one of them was actually good."
Oh.
And he just kind of leaned back in his chair and was like, "Okay, let's see where this leads, you little wanker." And that's when I explained that he worked on 2000 AD in the original Judge Dredd series, and everybody's eyes lit up and they stared at him like, "That's who that is?" So I feel like I did my job, you know what I mean? And last up is our WTF Corner. It's where we talk about the stories from across the internet that just make you wonder, is this really the country I live in? This cannot be the country I live in. An angry Cheeto is in charge of everything, and I'm going to die.
Puffy or Crunch?
Judging by his pallor, I would guess spicy hot. But, that's just a guess. We'll start off with video game videos, incredible plays, unbelievable falls, and the serious things that have made you spend $80 on a goddamn controller. And the first video was a real eye-opener for me, and I mean that literally. This is an Elder Scrolls V video, a Skyrim video.
Okay.
This came from the channel user FAWD65, FAWD65, and he titled this video, "It Must Be Exciting."
Huh.
I will share the video with you, but I will say it's one of those things that when you first view it, it's not obvious what happens, and as soon as it starts, I'm going to hear loud whoas, and then there's going to be some giggling because it gets weird. I sent the video. Nondescript village, wall, and what's that? Ah! It turned around!
Hey. Hi?
Have anything interesting to tell me?
Yeah, I have something interesting to tell you. You're stuck in a wall.
I heard they live their entire life without uttering a single word. Can you even imagine?
Yeah, looking at your head, I could totally imagine, actually.
I can't imagine how exciting it would be to journey from place to place,
How exciting it must be to journey from place... You're writing this yourself, aren't you?
Huh. Yeah.
That's creepy.
That was not the PC version, but yeah.
Yeah, as weird as it is to stare at her just calmly explaining to you her lifestyle, is just like, you're just a Head and Shoulders.
And not the shampoo.
That would make her more refreshing. But, I have a Titanfall 2 video for you.
Oh, sweet.
And I may have found the video that in 33 seconds beats your 12-minute diatribe of I beat a team by myself.
Okay.
You want to take up that challenge? Because I think I found it. Okay. This came from the channel of user Tim B, Tim space B. And he titled this video, "This fight ain't over till I say so."
Oh.
You're just really curious now, aren't you?
Those are fighting words.
I think this works. I sent the video.
Okay.
So we are in the epilogue. You can see right there that they're trying to escape via dropship, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And the player's trying his hardest to take it down. This Titan's kind of beat up.
Playing a Scorch.
He's trying hard with
not
that Scorch.
The easiest to...
No, but look, he's got something in his face. And his Titan's gone nuclear. He's ejecting, firing on the ship, and blew it up as it escaped.
Oh my god.
He lost his Titan, and random shot, he just took out the dropship just before it got away.
That was a win.
The grenade.
That was a win.
That wasn't the grenade. That was the anti-Titan magnetic launcher. Oh, okay, you are right. Sorry, I mistook the launcher when you said it was a grenade. It's like, no, he didn't just toss a grenade. He actually took that sucker out.
Yeah.
But that's got to be one of those moments where I'm sure even in the moment they were escaping, it's just like, oh, screw you guys. Well, I did screw you guys. Okay. Have you guys been enjoying the stuff that comes out of the For Honor beta?
Haven't been
some
doing
of it.
It seems like a pretty impressive MOBA game. It looks like it could be a lot of fun, but I don't have a lot of time to play video games while doing the show.
Yeah.
But it almost seems like cheating sometimes to bring up these videos because it's a beta. This is where they're supposed to work out the bugs that are so darn hilarious to the rest of us.
Yeah, they lost some of my respect. Well, it wasn't their fault, but Conan had Tom Brady playing the game on...
Oh, yeah, I don't like anything Tom Brady does either, but that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
But this is a video from the For Honor beta. It came from the channel of user, I don't even know how to pronounce this, XXSKN10XX. He titled his video, "Thinking with Portals."
Huh.
I know, so many things it could be, but I just went ahead and sent the video. So the player is a samurai up against a Viking with a poleaxe. Fighting hard there.
Nice. Yeah, some really good
backing him up to the ledge.
Kick him.
He's going to take his one good shot. Ah, darn it. And butt him off the edge. Ha ha. I hit him so hard, he fell from the sky.
Wow! That was pretty good.
A death so nice
I love how he
twice.
ran to the edge, too. He's just like, no.
Now you are thinking with portals. Overwatch videos are kind of a dime a dozen these days, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
It's like shooting fish in the barrel. It's a little too easy.
Yeah.
Now I'm almost sorry I said that, because I have an Overwatch video for you. This came from the channel of user Eric Zona, ERICZONA. I'm guessing he's in Arizona somewhere. He titled his video, "Widowmaker Insane Double Hook Shot."
Okay.
It's kind of hard to pull apart what he's talking about just in the title there. I'm guessing he doesn't do this for a living.
No, I think I understand what's going on there.
Oh, no, I've watched the video. This is some next-level stuff. I sent the video. Widowmaker play the game.
Yep.
Watch this.
Sharpshooter.
You gotta defend the payload. Match just started. So as soon as it goes off, fire grappling hook, aim down the scope, and snipe one! Snipe two in the air!
Oh, nice. Wow.
That was well done.
That was play the game for the very
I know, that's one of those cases where if you're on that team, you almost just want to say, okay, so I've done my work, I'm just going to go sit on a rooftop while you guys work this out.
No, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be.
It was an impressive shot considering that the Widowmaker was still in the air when she landed those two snipes.
Yeah, no, there is an achievement for that, actually.
I have one more video for you guys, and it's a Last Guardian video.
Okay.
The Last Guardian, for a game that's been worked on for like 12 years, really doesn't seem like a finished product. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But apparently they decided it's good for people, and boy, have they sent out a product. This video came from the channel of user Jonathan Perez, Jonathan space Perez, and he must have been tired too. He titled his video, "I waited nearly a decade for this experience."
Wow. A little bitter.
Oh, wait till you see it. I sent the video. Okay, so you're climbing with the hindquarters. It says remove spear. Remove spear from his asshole. Are you kidding me?
God.
He has a spear sticking straight out of his ass. I have to pull this out. No, I don't want to remove the spear. I want to leave it there, goddammit. The things I do for my giant monkey pet. I'm trying to remove the spear. Stop telling me that. Come on. Stop puckering. Thank you. No, don't sit. Don't sit. He sat on my head. I am almost curious to ask if that's... Yeah, I'm almost curious to ask if that happens in every game in The Last Guardian where you have to remove a spear from the monster's ass. Well, from his asshole, really. At the same time, I no longer care.
Yeah. No.
I don't have words for that, but I'm going to take a link for that and send it to Hollywood Babylon. I'm pretty sure that would fit in their inappropriate toys section. There are some... I'm so glad we stopped doing video game stories in general, not because it was taking up time, but because I was getting tired of hearing about esports people doing stupid things. Unfortunately, I deal on the internet, which means it's unavoidable sometimes to hear about esports people doing stupid things. 2 Korean esports pros in Overwatch have been suspended.
Okay.
They are South Korean Overwatch team Lunatic High. The band players are Lee Tae-jun and Goom Dean Dong-gwen.
Mm-hmm.
They have been suspended by their team for 2 months, which precludes them from participating in OGN's Apex Season 2. Now, Lunatic High does have a couple alternates that they're going to tap for the round, so it's not like Lunatic High is losing out on potential bonuses, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
The 2 Korean players in question, again, Lee Tae-jun and Goom Dong-gwan, they've been suspended for having inappropriate conversations with female fans.
Oh. Okay.
Now, I mean, I know in the U.S., Americans have this weird expectation about celebrities that they have to be very accessible to us, to the point where their privacy often gets completely disturbed upon. Jesse, what is it like for celebrities in Korea? Give me a little insight here.
I have no clue.
Okay. So the problem is that according to, I guess, the bylaws of esports in Korea, the players have taken advantage of their relationships with their fans to have inappropriate conversations with a number of them. Some of Dean's fans in particular revealed that he was having multiple online affairs with women, not physical, online affairs, and even set up a Twitter account under the name Dungeon Victims.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry, his fans set up the Dungeon Victims tweet handle to produce proof of the chats that he's had with them. According to Korean-speaking Redditors involved in the Overwatch community, at least one of the fans Dean was talking to is a minor.
Ooh.
So they've released statements of apology. I'm not going to bother reading them because, you know, how sincere are these things generally anyway? You know?
Mm-hmm.
It's really just a case of brains. You're supposed to use them. I don't know where else to go with that story because it's just stupid decision making.
Yeah.
A new Guinness World Record has been established by Masako Nozawa.
Okay.
You do not know who that is.
No.
Nope.
Jesse especially should know who that is.
I should?
Yes, Masako Nozawa has been given the current Guinness Book of World Records for the longest time voicing a single character in video games and the longest time working as a voice actor in video games.
Okay, who does he voice act?
She
Oh.
voice acts as Goku in Dragon Ball Z.
Oh. I don't know any of the Japanese voices.
And for the games as well. You know, I wish you would learn more about the people who work so hard to create these things that you coo about. But Masako Nozawa has been doing Goku for nearly 24 years.
Jesse's not a DBZ fan. You realize that, right?
He said he was a Dragon Ball fan.
No.
Oh, okay. We've had conversations before where you said you spent a long time watching that series and you wish I wouldn't make fun of it so much.
Yeah, I stopped watching it because it just got monotonous.
Still, though, 24 years, that would be during the era you were watching it, correct?
In the 90s when it showed up on Cartoon Network, yeah.
Yeah. Well, she got an award in Tokyo on January 31st for her 2 world records, current world records. I mean, 24 years is a long time to play one character.
Yeah.
I wonder if Mark Hamill ever gets tired of people shoving lightsabers in his faces.
Or Joker cards?
Oh, Jesus, no. As a matter of fact, Japan has another WTF story. They seem to have the latest fetish among their country, which is starting to spread to the U.S. This really hit prominence on the internet just after Anime Los Angeles. You ever heard of the virgin killing sweater?
No.
Not quite as literal as it sounds. It is a sweater. I guess you could say it's like a sweater singlet. I imagine you're not supposed to wear too much underneath this thing, but imagine a long sleeveless sweater, right? That has no back. It is like a collar, a sweeping, plunging backline, like almost down to butt crack, and then the bottom of the sweater. It's hard to describe. I sent you guys an image, but this thing is really starting to pop up in a lot of pop culture circles when it comes to Japanese culture.
Oh.
Okay.
This is the latest fetish in Japan, and I've seen a lot of people in my convention circle saying that they have to get one before the next convention, to which I kind of sit back and go, whatever.
I don't see anything wrong with this.
I don't see anything wrong with it, per se. It's just, it's an unusual item, and it's not exactly something that lends itself well to California weather, for sure.
Not during the summer, at least.
Not during most phases of the year, because a lot of the time it's going to be too cold to employ something like this. And it's popped up in a lot of fan art of different Japanese anime and video game characters, generally with nothing else on but the virgin killing sweater, as they call it. But on the bright side, you can buy these from Chinese retailers in both gray and black, so if you're really feeling it. I can only imagine what my wife would say if I ever approached her with one of those.
Someone's going to die.
No, she'd probably toss it back at me and say, "You wear it, asshole." What do you guys think of PETA?
I try not to.
They did have a purpose, but then they kind of went overboard.
I think PETA has a very good mission statement and a good set of ideals, but I often think they have no clue how to go about it.
Yep, sounds about right.
A story on IO9 furthers that particular opinion. Because PETA is trying to get someone to stop wearing fur, but it's not a conversation you can really have because this person doesn't technically exist.
Who?
They want the Marines from Warhammer 40K to stop wearing furs as part of their armors.
I'm assuming they're specifically referring to the Space Wolves.
I don't know the world of Warhammer 40K at all. I assume that PETA probably doesn't understand the world of Warhammer 40K any better than I do, frankly. But at the same time, one of the statements they released was noting that, quote, "Nothing on the bloody battlefields of Warhammer's conflict-ravaged universe could match the terrible reality of the fur trade," unquote. Really? Seriously?
Wow, really?
Universal dictatorship domination via a very iron hand, think like Hitler, but 1,000 times worse, and you think the worst things they have to worry about is the fur trade?
Their furs to be traded?
Our
galaxy in a war zone.
I try really hard not to be short-sighted, but as soon as I read that quote, my first thought was, fucking white people.
I would have to agree with you.
PETA went on to say that they claim that it, quote, "sends the message that wearing fur is acceptable when in fact it has no more place in 2017 than it would in the year 40,000, unquote. Okay, you have no idea, first of all, if money exists in the year 40,000. For all you know, fur is the only trade they have. It's true, right? I'm not saying that actually exists, but it's been 30,000 years. For all you know, dollar bills doesn't exist anymore.
Let me put this up to you. They're worried that that's all the players are really worried about.
Yeah, not leveling up, not fantasy world. This is almost as laughable as D&D is the road to Satan. Okay, sure.
Or Pokemon.
You know, so far the worst D&D has led me into is Kiss. And I lament it very much, but it doesn't make me evil. So, this is what they choose to focus on right now. Warhammer 40K is promoting a fur trade of some sort.
And yeah, that's brilliant.
I don't think any side of any faction in that universe gives a flying fuck about that.
I have a solution.
Yeah.
How about you stop worrying about a fictional fur trade and go worry about an actual fur trade?
Yeah!
That would be a better use of your time.
Real world.
You know, because I'm sure a fur trade does exist on this planet, and yes, I agree that in the current climate, wearing fur is not really a reasonable thing to do. Go solve that problem rather than deciding that you need to intrude your strange belief system onto my fantasy structure. God forbid you tell them that you wear a fur foxtail butt plug. I don't want to know what they have to say about that. Also in WTF news, I go to the gym on a regular basis.
I should be going to a gym on a regular basis.
I'm not going to have that conversation because that's just going to get awfully personal. But I go to the gym on a regular basis, and often I would like someone to work out with. You know, a partner would be really helpful. It's motivating. It helps you keep pace, and it's really reassuring when someone's there to help you out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Someone in Japan has a crowdfunding campaign that easily attained its goal to produce partners at their gym. That sounds awesome until you realize this is a maid gym.
Oh.
Someone has done a successful Kickstarter campaign for a maid gym. Yes, you go through your workout with someone in a maid outfit helping you through the stages. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that fetishize maids. I have no truck with that whatsoever. However, I have gone to maid cafes. I'm not comfortable when people I don't know and don't know me are trying to pretend that we have a master-servant relationship. It bugs the hell out of me. In my brain, I cannot make the connect where this is fun. Now, the idea of someone in a maid outfit calling me master and trying to help me with my form while I'm lifting weights, I'm pretty sure my first reaction would be, get your hands off me. You know what I mean?
No, but whatever.
This is not my wheelhouse. When people are at maid cafes, they try to get way too much in my personal space when often I'm just trying to people watch. I really don't like the idea of this person that I don't know who doesn't look like they lift weights themselves is trying to help me lift weights.
Funny, because the weird image I got in my head when he said, partners in maid outfits was a guy who does regular workout in a maid outfit and just a maid
It's not a guy. I'm talking like svelte girls. I'm talking slender girls in maid outfits.
I understand. That was the first image that came to my mind when
You know, I'm already assisting women in the gym with racking weights when they need it. I don't need this level of help. That would creep the hell out of me. And all the images of this lady following this guy around, whispering things in his ear and, standing there as he's trying to bench press. Yeah. No, I don't need that. You want to end with some D&D quotes? It's been a while since we've had out-of-context D&D quotes.
That's true.
Out-of-context D&D quotes from outofcontextdnd.tumblr.com. Quotes from role-playing games when taken by themselves can just put a pretty big smile on your face. The first quote I have for you, I roll to seduce the tail.
What?
I roll to seduce the tail. Just the tail of something.
I'm assuming as like someone following them, but
I don't know. It's just the quote. The next quote, I rolled a 19 to see if it's still freaky.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's still freaky. You rolled high enough.
This is the second time I've pissed on a teammate, and the first time it's been called for.
Wow. Wow.
She is the hottest woman in the room. She has a fever. Don't slut shame the cat.
Okay.
This is a conversation between an unknown player in the game and the dungeon master. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Is there anything that lets me know if he's hostile? You are in initiative. The next one sounds like something I would try to do in a game, and it never ends well. I attempt to climb Dionysus.
Uh-huh.
Usually climbing a god is a bad thing.
Usually.
Yeah.
Especially the one of madness and wine.
The next one could have been a quote at a D&D game or a party, for all I know. Will inhaling harm me?
Roll a con save.
Actually, I love this next one because it's a quote between the party sorcerer and everyone else in the room. And it ends on the sorcerer. It begins and ends on the sorcerer, okay?
Alright.
It starts out with... Are you okay? I sense evil. And the last quote I have for you, no explanation whatsoever. It just says, my tongue wasn't strong enough.
Whoa.
He's probably trying to... I bet you he's trying to pull the spear out of a monster's butthole. The subject this week is an IDW comic, the Transformers series Last Stand of the Wreckers. Gosh, I don't exactly remember the year it came out. I want to say this is like a 2012 series? I really don't recall. Oh, no, it's a 2010 series. Jeez, wow. 6 years ago. The story was by Nick Roach and James Roberts. The script is by Nick Roach. The pencils is by Nick Roach. The inks is by Nick Roach and John Wyko. The colors are by Josh Burkham. I guess Nick Roach was busy. The letters are by Neil Uyetake, and the associate editor is Denton J. Tripton. This is the story of the Autobots' greatest heroes of story and song, the Wreckers, have been recalled into duty, both original members and new members, for a mission by Ultra Magnus to retrieve something. And we got referred to this series because of a story we recently read of the 15 greatest Transformers stories of all time, and this topped the list, so it piqued our curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, these are not the characters I remember from my childhood.
No, my biggest surprise was Perceptor.
Perceptor was the least surprising because he appeared in prior Transformers comics like that. The biggest surprise to me was frickin', if I had to pin it down to a single character, I would probably say Springer.
Yeah.
Springer, in the original cartoons and comic books, was kind of a wisecracker, you know, somebody on the outskirts of everything who didn't really solve anything, but he always had a nice quip. Springer in this series is an erstwhile soldier and leader. You know, somebody you could follow into combat, even though his plan is generally we get in there, blast, and get out. We good? I will say, number one, I like the art, but not the art style. It's kind of hard to explain. I think overall the art worked pretty well for me. However, Nick Roach's version of faces, everybody seemed like they were puckering a lot. Somehow even the character with a face mask, it almost sounded like they were puckering. You guys agree or disagree with that statement? It's just what I felt looking at the art.
Yeah, the art was a little odd.
I didn't have much. A lot of the art was very reminiscent for me of some of the few Transformers comics I bought back in the 90s.
This felt like a couple steps above the 90s stuff for sure. I remember Marvel's 90s Transformers comics, and while I read them to the nth degree, they were not exactly inspiring from an artist standpoint.
No, very dark and gritty.
They really focus on the fact that these characters are made of squares. You know, it's almost like John Romita Jr. draws all Transformers.
It's coming off. It's coming off the heels of the Generation 1 cartoons, I guess.
Yeah. The first issue in itself did a very good job of world building and setting tone, though. I mean, everything was bleak from the very frickin' beginning.
Yeah, but for me it was a bit slow going, but I guess that is needed.
Well, you need to know the story of where they are. I mean, it doesn't just set up Overlord as the de facto villain of the series, but it also kind of tells you what's necessary if you've never read any of the other Transformers comics. It's like I knew what Garrus 9 was because I read the comics, so when he landed on this planet, I wasn't surprised to find out it's a prison. If you're just coming in to read this series, it might be nice to get that bit of exposition and a little bit of explanation as to where are they and why should I care?
Yeah.
It
did drop you in right in the middle.
It is needed, but I'll still say it felt a bit slow at the beginning.
Well, that's the idea, though, because they are world building. They're reintroducing you to characters, even, like I said, they're ones that I knew from my childhood, but they weren't anything like this. You know, even Kup as the griddle veteran was a big departure from his cartoon and prior comic book counterparts. It did do a really good job of setting up Overlord as not crazy, but definitively psychopathic.
Yeah, just a bit.
You know, every decision he made was calculated and careful, but at the same time, this was not a guy you ever wanted to even shake hands with. They made that so clear it was disturbing.
Yeah. And they did qualify him as a certifiable badass.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that I never understood in comics. I guess the phrase Phase Sixer came from this particular book. I saw that a lot when I was reading Transformers and More Than Meets the Eye. They kept talking about Phase Sixers. It sounded really imposing, but it's in this series that you realize that was Megatron's Phase 6. You know, basically when a planet is on its heels and on the verge of going down, he would send in one of like 3 or 4 different individuals to go down and push it over the edge. That was his Phase Sixer. So to finally get that defined, I needed that. The story of the second stringers that were brought onto the Wreckers during this story, Rotor Storm, Pyro, and Iron Fist.
And Guzzle?
And Guzzle, yes. I actually started to gravitate pretty heavily towards these characters. They were interesting to read.
Yeah. Once I actually started to remember their names.
Yeah, they were really desperate to make their mark as Wreckers, and that was... It's a good bridge for the average reader because it represents where the reader is. They want to get deeper involved in these stories, and they need a device to help bring them in. And these second stringers and how they just keep dripping with the honey of the stories of the Wreckers' exploits really help set the stage. You know, it's kind of surprising to see where they ended up. And obviously not all the second stringers made it from the beginning of 5 issues to the end. But how they got to where they got was equally compelling and horrific. Yeah, the first issue was all story and character development for the most part. There wasn't a whole lot of action that wasn't sickly disturbing. Thank goodness these characters are robots, because in most other storytelling, the amount of gore in this would be off the charts.
Oh, God, just ripping heads off, blood everywhere.
Oh,
beating each other with limbs. I know, beating each other with limbs. I mean, shoot, man.
The mutilation, oh my God.
Yeah. One of the new characters that's been created via IDW is one of the Wreckers, Impactor. And I'm not quite sure what to think of him yet. He's appeared in a few other series after this, but if I had to give him an archetype, he is pretty much what Sylvester Stallone was looking for in Judge Dredd. Is that an apt description, or did I screw it up?
Yeah. I'll be honest, the way he drew his helmet does heavily remind me of a Spartan.
Well, that was kind of the idea. Prior to the reason why he was imprisoned on Garrus 9, he was the leader of the Wreckers. He was the meanest of the mean. You know, I get the feeling that Grimlock was probably one of those guys Impactor wanted to run across, not because he was looking for a friend, but just because sooner or later he wanted to test his strength versus the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, though, that Nick Roach had trouble with the one human character in the story.
Yes. Oh, my God.
Her proportions and her face just seem to change throughout the series.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not saying he did a crap job, but apparently humans is not really his forte.
At least faces.
the character of Verity did add a little something extra to this story because I know she wanted to be a badass warrior with the Wreckers, but her function throughout this series, if I had to give you an allegory, would be Jiminy Cricket. It sounds stupid, but if these guys were just left to their devices to do whatever they want, this thing could have ended with a genocide. And she kept them at least reasonably grounded in a bad situation. The second issue really started to kick things off towards the end, but it still didn't really develop until the third issue. The third issue is when things became bad. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you know, I there's a lot of stuff in there that I was just like, really?
What do you mean by really?
I don't know. I guess I'm not as big a Transformers fan as I used to be.
I had to backtrack a little bit because I missed some of the timestamps.
Yeah, that was one of the confusing things. I'm still not sure I really have the timeline 100%, but whatever.
Well, at least when they showed Shockwave at the very beginning of issue 3, they did put in there 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, they kept saying that Overlord apparently was in charge of Garrus 9 for about 3 years.
Yeah.
So Shockwave was not his first concern when he got there, but he made it a concern eventually. And Shockwave eventually left after striking a deal with Overlord. At this point, the Wreckers are split into two parties, and the party full of second stringers, Perceptor and Verity, landed right in front of Overlord in his throne room. Rolled a 1, is all I can say. You know, that was not cool. Although I did appreciate when Overlord was just monologuing and really patronizing this crew, that Rotorstorm was the one that said, "Bold words, Overlord, but you reckoned without one thing. Wreckers, combine!"
Yeah, that was horrible.
That was priceless. And the follow-up was very, very vicious.
The follow-up was brutal. I mean, you know, Rotorstorm said, well, I thought it was funny. And Overlord starts chuckling, breaks out into belly laughter, and then mid-laugh just puts a gun right to Rotorstorm's head and pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
And
Rotorstorm was just like, well, at least you've got a sense of humor, and it's just like, why? Why did you?
I mean, it did seem like for a second I don't want to say they were going to live, but at least Overlord might give them a little bit of a chance. But at the same time, that was the moment where Overlord just cemented himself as, okay, no trust, no talk, just run. It got worse from there. The story of Springer's three-man crew, how they were captured, almost seemed benign until you get to the end of that particular issue.
Yeah.
But I did like the fact that they had a plan. They were going to free Grimlock from the cells just to add to some chaos, then they realized Grimlock's not there for some reason.
And it's like, well, that was a gun we would have liked to have had.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would have been eminently useful in this situation. By this time in the IDW storyline, Grimlock was well into his dinosaur mode. The other Dinobots don't like him. They figure he betrayed them because he followed Shockwave to a planet where they picked up beast modes. Because of what Shockwave did to the planet, their beast modes were burned off. So, and their scanning architecture, the thing that allows them to choose new forms, was destroyed. So they're stuck in these dinosaur forms. You know, why it was never fixed, I guess that's a whole other story. Maybe the systems are fused together, but that's how they ended up in these forms. So because of his flagrant disregard, that's why Grimlock was locked up on Garrus 9. Why he was released, I'm still unclear.
I thought he was released because of Snare.
Snare went looking for him, or Snare was aware that they weren't going to find him.
Yeah. They never said how or where he went or anything like that. They just said, the things that he underwent there, he went kind of nuts.
Yeah, I know where Grimlock is now. I still don't know how he ended up on the ship that got him there, though. Grimlock is in the hands of 5 Decepticon scavengers.
Are they aware of what he is?
They're very aware of what he is, although Grimlock doesn't seem... Well, let me check that. Grimlock will not transform out of dinosaur mode and seems to be convinced that... Or doesn't seem to have memories in general. He doesn't speak. He just makes these weird honking and roaring sounds every now and again. But because of a recent adventure where he saved their butts from somebody that betrayed them, they decided to give him his own room on their ship. Originally, he was just supposed to be a bargaining piece. We show up on Cybertron with this, maybe they won't immediately shoot us. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they decided that what's going on in Cybertron is a little too thick, don't want to get involved, but they'll just take this guy that doesn't seem to have memories with him, so Misfire leads him to a room after their latest adventure. That's one of the Decepticons in the scavenger crew. Opens a door and says, look, you've got your own space now. You're not going to be caged up. We figure out after what you did, you earned it. And, Misfire turns around and says, 4 walls and everything. Probably the best we can do for you. And from behind him he hears, well, that's awfully kind of you. Thanks for offering. You're welcome. And he turns around and stares at this Tyrannosaurus that's staring back at him. Did you just say? And it just starts growling at him, so he has to leave. So now it's a little unclear how much of Grimlock's brain is actually functioning right now.
He could be just playing possum because he's tired of shit.
He could be, but we still don't know. But, issue 3 is when... issue 3 and Last Stand of the Wreckers, things went from bad to worse. What they did to Fortress Maximus, turning him into a living lockpick without arms and legs and eyes...
Oh, God, that was creepy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I doubt he was anywhere near conscious for any of that, but when I read his reappearance in More Than Meets the Eye, they kept talking about Overlord and trauma, and I kept thinking, what does that mean? I get it.
Yeah.
I get it now.
Yeah. I can see some trauma there.
Yeah. Because they hauled him around like a piece of meat for the rest of the series. And not like kindly, they just kept tossing him on top of each other as they transformed and rolled around.
What could you really do with him?
Not much. I mean, he's definitely not going to walk himself out of there. I guess that's why I was kind of impressed with this story, was not because of the violence, but because of what these guys had to survive to get to the frickin' end. Because a base full of, I don't even want to say Decepticons, just insane Cybertronians willing to do anything it took to survive based on this overridingly powerful overlord makes a very terrifying place.
Mm.
In issue 4, it didn't get any better. I will say, did you guys catch in issue 3 when Guzzle was talking to Cup?
No.
Guzzle said that a lot of his friends lost their lives to save one robot.
I saw that, but I didn't know who they were referring to.
They were referring to Cup.
Oh.
One of the things I read was Cup's one-issue spotlight. Cup had gone insane on a planet. The atmosphere was poisoning his mind, so he kept imagining these robot zombies coming to attack him on an almost daily basis. Turns out that the prolonged exposure was driving him insane, but the short-term exposure was okay, so Autobots kept going down trying to rescue him.
Ah.
And that's what he saw as a zombie, so he kept terminating them.
Oh.
It was only when like a 6-man crew led by Ultra Magnus went down to go get him that they actually dragged him off the planet. So that's what Guzzle's referring to. And that's one of the few things I knew going into this series. So when Guzzle mentioned a bunch of his friends went to rescue one worthless guy, it's like, oh crap. He might shoot him in the back of the head just because. The suicide scene for Top Spin and Twin Twist.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was disheartening. It was a nice device, though, but, dear God, the torture that the artist put Twin Twist through.
Yeah.
Missing probably half his head after the first session of torture.
And it still was conscious of, bitch at Impactor and Springer arguing with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that
was
God.
Funny, but a bit macabre.
Oh, it was totally macabre. But again, thank goodness they're robots. And we find out the thing that the Wreckers have been sent to retrieve from Garrus 9 is the Equitus. a device that instantly judges whether or not a prisoner is guilty or innocent based on the data you feed it. That's a terrifying... It's an understandable machine, but it's very terrifying that you really don't get a chance to plead your case. It just scans a bunch of brains and says, well, this one's going to jail. Well, this one can go free. That's terrible. But it's probably a necessary thing because the reason why they were sent to retrieve it is obviously you don't want it falling into Decepticon hands because goodness knows what a bunch...
everything.
Right, it's archived everything, and goodness knows what it knows about what Autobots did during their particular ruling periods of Cybertron.
Mm.
And it's very... You almost feel sorry for Iron Fist because he gets stuck with all that information.
Well, I feel sorry for Iron Fist because the truth of what the Wreckers had done on some of their adventures versus the stories was... It's demoralizing. And as the biggest fan of the Wreckers, he now has both pieces of information in his head.
Yeah, and he's the one that wrote those romantic stories. Or romanticized stories.
You know, and issue 5, I thought issue 5 actually tied all this up pretty well. I will admit that I'm surprised to find out there was a Sins of the Wreckers series that came out afterwards. Because this miniseries did a pretty good job of taking the Wreckers story and putting a pin in it. Everything could have ended really definitively at the end of this.
Mm.
The way they took down Overlord was a nice piece of teamwork, but it took a lot. You know, Guzzle was ripped in half the short way. Springer lost his face.
Yeah, that was freaky.
Yeah.
You know, Overlord took one swiping hand at him and somehow didn't just knock half of his head off, but swiped his face.
And then his comment afterwards.
Sweet.
I know. And is it sad that when I read that story, I'm just like, ew, but at the same time, in the back of my head, all I can hear is Peter Cullen yelling, "Give me your face!"
Oh, shoot, Pyro.
Oh, yeah, Pyro. His dismemberment right there on the panel.
I was actually really surprised when... God, names. The one that everybody hated. The one that was at prison.
Overlord?
Yeah. Impactor.
No, Impactor. Yeah, when Impactor showed back up after it showed Overlord crushing his head... I was a bit surprised. How the hell did he get back up?
He's a certifiable badass, apparently.
Yeah, he is the guy that will not stop no matter. And, you know, Impactor did get a little bit of redemption at the end because he moved back from being homicidal back into the realm of being a soldier during the period of this story. I'm not going to say it's a full redemption, but I think he understands a little bit more about what it means to be a soldier versus what it means to be a killer.
I really love that one particular story of catching Squadron X, told first through Iron Fist.
I know, it was told first as a story of heroic sacrifice and capture at all costs, and then all of a sudden you find out that Impactor basically sacrificed Springer to capture them in the first place, and then because of a bureaucratic oversight, he was told to release him. Instead, he just took a gun and shot each of them between the eyes.
Yeah, executed them.
You know, and goodness knows how many of the Wreckers' other stories and missions were something like this.
Yeah.
And the page of him executing was just really just heartbreaking. Heartbreaking is probably not the right set of words, so I'm going to say, but
it was disturbing for sure.
Yes,
it was way too easy for him.
The Wreckers knew what these guys did, and they couldn't let them go. But what could they do?
Oh, therein lies the question. But the last part of the story, when you find out that Iron Fist joined this squad because he was going to die anyway.
Yeah.
You know, he was a weapons designer. He designed cerebro bullets that drill into the head, and unfortunately an early prototype misfired and was slowly drilling into his skull.
Well, and listen to his speech about making weapons and all that was just really heartbreaking for him because he was very...
He was a character.
Yeah.
He was a likable character, but at the same time, his weapon designing was pretty damn good. Every shot they fired into someone's head was an instant explosion. So obviously he was really good at what he did.
Mm.
And he joined this mission thinking he knew what the Equitus generally was, or at the very least he would have to sacrifice himself to turn it on. So he knew either way he wasn't going to survive. He thought he was going to give a noble sacrifice to help the Wreckers, and it turns out he survived the mission but didn't survive the ride home.
That
was sad, especially with Verity like crying over his lifeless form. But the especially disturbing part was we heard during our story about the greatest Transformer stories about what kind of character Prowl is. And then when he took that data slug that had all the information that Iron Fist took, Ultra Magnus called it his legacy, and I'm not sure, but in the last panels it looks like he takes it between his fingers and just crushes it.
I'm not sure about that.
it's hard to say. I can see the mark signifying some kind of impact, I guess.
Not impact. It looks like he's applying pressure. And that's the kind of information Prowl couldn't allow to get out.
Yeah. Knowing his personality.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not implicit there on the page, but I firmly believe, personally, that he crushed that data slug. So, all the idea that Iron Fist went through all this trouble to meet his heroes, suddenly had that veil of fandom lifted from his eyes, saw them for what they were, damn near hated them, and then had to die with that knowledge.
His world has got turned upside down and destroyed.
It became a lot smaller, for sure. Because you can imagine that probably affected everything he thought about his heroes from the beginning of his life to the end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a disturbing story, but dear God, is it a good story.
Yes.
You know, I don't think it was slow in the beginning. I just think they did a really good... They set all the dominoes up very carefully instead of haphazardly letting you either fill in the blanks or trying to discover details that you didn't have on your own. And it's a really good standalone story. You're not required to read any other Transformers comics to get the gist of it. And it's a really good introduction to the universe that the Transformers currently sit in. It's one of those stories where you're not going to get overridden with stories of the heroism of characters like Bumblebee and Optimus Prime and all the names you probably know from every other Transformers story. It's not a story that gets bogged down in the probable villainy of characters like Starscream, Megatron, and Soundwave. These are a bunch of characters you either haven't heard of or were so far down the pecking order you probably didn't care about, and they made a really good story involving them. You guys got anything to add?
The narrative that they pick up in for 4 and 5, I thought was really neat, and I wish that got carried out through the rest of the story arc, but... Okay, because you almost said issue 6, and I was about to ask, what exactly did you do? Issue 6? Because I didn't see an issue 4 and 5. 6. Yeah, 4 and 5. 4 and 5. The narrative with the looks like, typewriter font.
I think the typewriter font was supposed to be the exposition via the story Verity wrote at the end of it all.
Yeah, no, I get that. I enjoyed that. There was an outside perspective of telling what happened. And I kind of wish I got kind of carried throughout the first 3, but...
I was actually more glad that it picked up towards the end of the series, not because it implied that anyone was going to survive, but it really just kind of took this whole thing from what you were seeing. You had a full chance to build an opinion without an extra narrative, and then towards the end, you had a little bit of a helpful guide to get you through the final and very much climactic parts of this story. Just a little extra push to help centralize everything and bring you back into the central story. I thought it was well timed. Steve, what you got?
I found out that I wasn't as big a Transformers fan as I used to be. I remember some of the characters. I had, not Topspin, but the other one, the one with the drill.
Twin Twist.
Twin Twist. I had Twin Twist as a kid and whatnot, but Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed this story for what it was, but remembering all the characters and everything else, it just, didn't do it for me.
I don't think remembering characters in this story is going to help you because, again, they are vastly different from their cartoon counterparts.
Oh, yeah.
These are new guys, in my opinion. They may share the names, they may share some physical attributes, but these are not the same characters.
I mean, I've heard a lot of things about Springer, so I wasn't too surprised at his character in this particular story, but Perceptor was like, what the hell? I mean, I get why he turned out to be this kind of character. I kind of get that from what I remember of him back in Generation 1.
It had nothing to do with Generation 1. The current storyline of Perceptor was that he survived on Cybertron during its dark era when there was no energy and it was overrun by these things that could best be described as like mutated Insecticons.
Mm-hmm.
But they were running low on soldiers, so he couldn't stay a scientist. Instead, he grabbed a long rifle and replaced one of his eyes with targeting optics. He became the premier marksman to keep people alive.
He became a survivalist.
No, marksman, because it's not like he's sitting there cutting things up. His job is to hit it at a distance before it gets in their path. So the stuff he did in this comic is an extension of the thing he created for himself early on in the IDW run of comic books.
Okay.
And, the IDW run has taken a lot of the Transformers properties and mythos and character devices and really turned them on their head. Like, Headmasters were an Earth invention. But it didn't involve any of the characters that were typically associated with Headmasters. I think Scorponok was the only one you would recognize. The first experimented characters to use it was a character named Hunter Onion and Sunstreaker.
Really? Sunstreaker?
They captured Sunstreaker, took his head, grafted it onto this other human, another experimentation, not a willing subject, just tried to see if it would work, then created the finished product for themselves later. And it didn't involve any of the characters you think it would, like Chrome Dome, Hardhead, Fengri, Weird Wolf, none of the Headmasters you would think of outside of Scorponok. Strange, right?
Yeah.
Pretenders have not made it into it because obviously that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The Dinobots, I've told you the short version of their story.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing some cover arts for that.
Yeah, they've done a really good job of taking it all and turning it inside out. But getting back into the central story, because it's been almost 3.5 hours. Last Stand of the Wreckers, if you're below the age of 15 or know someone below the age of 15, do not do. This is the type of thing that would give kids nightmares, straight up.
Despite the fact there's no quote-unquote blood.
Oh, look, dude, the flaming exoskeleton of Overlord at the end of this series was almost enough to give me bad dreams.
Well, that was kind of metal right there, but yeah. So I thought the mutilated corpse of Fortress of Maximus was pretty awful. Yeah, that was pretty awful. The termination of Snare by Impactor, how callous it was. Oh, yeah. Or the mutilated face of, what was it, Topspin or Twin Twist? Twin Twist. Twin Twist, yeah. That's not counting Pyro and his Game of Thrones moment he had there. Oh, God. But, if you're thinking this is a good robot story for kids below the age of 15, do not do. Seriously. No. Wait till they're of age. They will appreciate it when they're at a certain age and they're able to better understand why this kind of violence is both a storytelling device and bad. If they cried when Prime died in the original animated film, this is not for them. If they died when Prime cried if they cried when Prime died in the original animated film, they're already too old to be worried about violence. Okay. I do think this is a good gateway series because reading this reignited the interest I had in IDW's Transformers lines. This really just bridged me back into the idea of I got to read more of their comic books. And it's even as a standalone story, this is really good storytelling. I started to really feel for the characters and the various things they were discovering about themselves and their comrades throughout this. This was really good. You guys got anything to add? It has more regard to the arts because some of the more dynamic poses that some of these characters are put in seem to be really off. I'm looking at I'm not getting to see where Springer leaps forward with that spear to kill their interrogator.
Well, it's a, I saw that and I just said that's a very comic book pose. I could see 90% of human characters doing that at some point in a comic book. When it comes to a giant square-inspired robot, yeah, it's a little awkward. Just be glad nobody did like a Black Widow butt-out pose, okay? Nobody did a Milo Manara Spider-Woman on a rooftop. That would have looked really weird.
Oh, man.
But, I would firmly put this in my library. I need to find a trade of this and just put it on a shelf somewhere. And then keep slapping the hands of my sons until they're old enough to read it.
I think the other thing that was a little confusing for me was the background of the human character.
Verity was introduced very early in the Transformers comics before they were ongoing in IDW. That was back when they were doing chaptered storytelling. She has been a friend since they first discovered Autobots in this series.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was confused about her reluctance to go back to Earth and the fact that she seemed to be avoiding some kind of memories or something.
Well, she was friends with Hunter O'Neion, who didn't really... She was friends with a number of the other male characters, human characters that started out in this series, and they have not survived. I do not remember what happened to the third one. Hunter O'Neion, after he was separated from Sunstreak, had a number of surgeries to remove cybernetic parts, but as you can imagine, when you have a transforming body, you can't get rid of it all.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Decepticons decided to take advantage of that, took him, dissected him, and used him as a backdoor telepathic link to find out what Sunstreaker knows. So he did not survive that secondary procedure, as you can imagine. So as much as she has friends among the Autobots, they're her only friends at this point. The fact that she returned to Earth is basically her statement of, okay, I have seen enough. So to me, that was especially poignant when that she can override all these bad memories of the different things that have happened to her of her friends on Earth just to return to Earth, because what happened with the Wreckers was probably about, a 20 on the 1 to 10 scale of trauma.
Yeah.
When you're on a planet where all you think is all my friends died, suddenly you're in this adventure where, holy crap, half these guys have died, I'd rather go back to the other place.
Lesser of two evils.
Yeah, that tells you a lot about what she's seen. But does that help?
Yeah, that makes sense now.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right. You guys got any suggestions for what comes next?
Nothing on the top of my head.
Okay, because I have a little something percolating in the back pocket. I've held on to the first volume of the current run of Black Widow in case we need it.
All right.
Although after that, I'm going to do some research on that list of the 15 greatest DC stories ever read, because one or two of those Batman stories sounded really fracking compelling.
I want to read the longest. Oh, is it the Long Halloween or
the Long Halloween? I was more interested in Black Mirror.
Which one was the one where they show how it switched from mobsters to supervillains?
That's the Long Halloween.
Okay.
The Black Mirror was the one where Dick Grayson apparently has been Batman for a while, and he's trying to adjust to, life as the Bat. So, we will figure it out. Thank you for tuning in. I invite you to roll us again next week. Sorry if this was a little long, but again, when we have breaks, a lot of news comes out, and boy, was there a lot of news this week. Or the last 2 weeks, sorry. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great one. I am Jeremy.
Steve.
And Jesse.
Don't jerk and drive. Take care.